Before I tell you this story, let me say that hatred will get you nowhere. Eventually, karma will come back around and bite you in the butt. My parents are proud Irishmen and Irish women. They always were proud of their heritage and taught me to do the same. I was born and raised in Ireland, so I didn't have much prejudice growing up. Now, I did hear about a lot of hatred towards the Irish, especially from the English. But my parents always taught me that not all English people were like that. I didn't hate the English. They were people just like us, you know. The only time I would dislike somebody for being English is if they had a problem with me for being Irish. After I graduated school, I headed to London to go to university. I moved there, and the first time was out of Ireland. The tiny town I grew up in Ireland was very different from the big, fast-paced city of London. However, I adjusted pretty quickly. While I was there, I saw a little anti-Irish sentiment, but it wasn't too much. Most of these negative attitudes towards the Irish were fading, much to my relief. It did not mean I still did not experience it, but it wasn't really common. Once I graduated from university, I decided to stay in London and got myself an office job. My friends and I rented an apartment that wasn't far from my job. Soon after I started working, I ended up meeting an Englishman named Michael. He was 8 years older than me, and though I never was aware of this then, we first met at a coffee shop, frequented during our breaks and before work. One thing led to another, and soon I found myself giving Michael my number. Even after I found out Michael's age, I didn't care. Michael was a little more hesitant, but I was pretty persistent. When Michael first introduced me to his family, I was nervous, but his parents were lovely. It was his sister, Laura, who was the problem. She was cold and snobby to me, but I brushed it off as her being an overprotective older sister. Eventually, I learned that Laura was quite a proud English woman, to the point where she made these snide comments about the Scottish and Irish. According to Laura, they were less than I was surprised because no one else seemed to have these views. Michael explained his sister had always been very strange, and that was the best way to explain it. The first time Laura tried to break us up was by pretending she got a nasty email from somebody claiming to be me. This was easily proven wrong because it was not my email address. When this did not work, Laura tried to become the victim again by vandalizing her own car. But I clocked into work, which I was able to prove. She ramped up her efforts, but after trying to play the victim, she tried to be the bully. Whenever we were around each other, Laura would make these snide comments about my Irish heritage. Anytime anybody called her out on it, she started throwing a literal tantrum. Eventually, I just left and said I wasn't going to put up with this crap. Michael stood by me, and we would still see his parents, but not during times when Laura was known to be there. She did worm her way back into her parents' good graces, and sometimes would even show up when I was there. I know what some of you may be thinking. Why didn't I have a spine and take myself out of the situation? Well, I loved Michael, and he always stood up for me against his sister, no matter how much of a fit she would throw. The longer we dated, I'd say the more easily I was able to brush off Laura's comments. Then came the day of the engagement. You see, after dating for a few years, Michael popped the question, and I, of course, said yes. Oh, Laura, she was so mad when she learned about the engagement. I guess she was still hoping the two of us were going to break up, but this could not have been further from the truth. It did not matter what she tried to do. I intended to still go through with the marriage at the same thing, could go with Michael. To try to be nice, I invited her to the wedding reception. The two of us eloped because we didn't want issues and have a wedding reception after. As you can imagine, it did not take her long to start throwing a fit right there at the reception. She begged my now husband to get an annulment. It was not too late since the two of us had not been married for long. Michael told her that he wasn't going to end the marriage under any circumstances, so we continued with our wedding party. Laura was taken home by her husband, who apologized for her behavior. I had no idea why he stuck around her. Maybe it had to do with their son, but that could not be a very healthy environment for their child. My parents had been warned about my new sister-in-law, so they would not be surprised when she started stirring up her crap. They did pull me aside and ask me if I wanted to marry into this family, but I assured them that I did want to. I loved Michael too much to let him go. It did stink that I had to deal with Laura's behavior and attitude towards me just because I was Irish, but it was a cross I thought I had to bear. One would think that now that I was family, Laura would try to bury her dislike of Irish people to get to know me, but she did not do that at all. All she did was double down on the fact that she didn't like me, and Laura was going to make sure everyone knew that. So, Michael and I decided to finally keep our distance from Laura. We would still meet up with his parents though, and I thought it was a better idea to invite them to our home. It was better if they came to us rather than us going to them, so we could avoid seeing Laura for the most part. However, it wasn't like I could avoid Laura entirely, and during family events such as holidays, birthdays, and other celebrations, we were forced to see her. It was only a few times a year, but sure enough, whenever we saw each other, she would start her snide comments and I would clap back, calling her ignorant, which would send Laura into a tailspin. Then she would start saying proudly that her precious son James would never marry an Irish woman. He would marry an English woman just like everyone before him. James was such a great guy. I was proud to call him my nephew, and thankfully he did not catch his mother's attitude towards Irish people or anyone who wasn't English. James seemed more embarrassed than anything, and I couldn't blame him. I mean, the next few years that passed were quite tiring. Year after year passed, and Laura did not change her attitude at all. However, I did not see that much of her anymore. I was thankful I didn't see her. When we learned that James was engaged to get married, all of us were happy. I was glad that James had found somebody, but was worried about how Laura would react because of how intense that she could be. She starts to brag about how her son was marrying a great woman. See, Mary, James' fiancée, was very bright and beautiful. She graduated early and started working at a law firm as a paralegal. The girl was smart. However, the thing Laura seemed to be excited about the most was the fact that she was an English girl. I thought it was so stupid to be excited like that, and, James marrying an English girl and not a dirty Irish girl like me. All that sounds, it should matter. I mean, come on. It should just matter only that James is marrying somebody who was a great person who loved him. Wouldn't that matter the most to you? If you asked anybody but Laura, they would say yes. But if you asked Laura, the answer would obviously be no. The bragging was making James uncomfortable, but he handled it well like he always did when his mother did something strange. It was around this time James announced that he had something to tell us. When he sat the family down, except his parents, I thought he was going to tell us that he and Mary were pregnant. Two of them were young, but both were hard workers and had a good support system, so there was no way they couldn't do it. If anything, they could do it. Instead, James told us something I did not expect at all. Mary was Irish, not half Irish or quarter Irish, no. Mary was full-blooded Irish. Her parents have been born and raised in Ireland. So had Mary, but the reason she didn't have an accent is that when she was about 6 or 7 years of age, her parents accepted a job in England. From there, they moved to England, and Mary's lived there ever since. Her accent mostly sounds English. So Laura had no idea Mary was originally from Ireland. It made sense why James had lied about this for so long. If his mother knew that he was marrying an Irish girl, she would never let him live it down. But he loved her, so James did not want to keep up the lie any longer. Besides, once everyone heard her family accent, then they would know the truth. So, a part of me felt so smug and vindicated, I just did not tell or show this to James. The only person I showed this to was Michael. To think that for years Laura had given me crap about being Irish and bragged about her son never going to marry a nasty Irish girl. Now her son was engaged to be married to an Irish girl. The best part? Laura has no idea. See, Laura was going to go ballistic when she realized that Mary was Irish. As smug as I felt, I also felt bad for them because the moment she found out, she was going to flip her lid and make things very, very difficult for Mary. However, James told us he was already prepared for this moment anyways. He was going to tell his mother through a simple text message and see what happened from there, and I assured my nephew that we were always going to be there for him no matter what. If his mother acted up, then we would help him deal with it. It was about time somebody stood up to Laura, and I would not back down to keep the peace. This was her son. James and Mary came over to our place that day that they sent the text message, and it didn't take long before his mother blew up his phone, but he did not answer the phone right away. Eventually, he did, and everything she said was horrible. I don't even want to repeat it. It was most of the stuff that she had said about me over the past few years. But this time it was directed to her son's fiancée, and this was the woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life with? Mom, I'm marrying Mary whether you like it or not. Either accept Mary and stop calling her names, or I will not let you stay in my life anymore, Mom. This includes you not going to the wedding. And then here came more insult. It led to James hanging up on her and telling us that he didn't think his mom was going to be invited to the wedding. Michael and I did our best to comfort him because doing it to me was one thing, but to her son? You know what? I think that this has simply gone too far. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. So today's story is very interesting. However, update number 1 titled, My sister-in-law blames her son marrying an Irish woman, so I taunt her. Yep, that update's about to come straight to you guys right now, and you're not going to believe what's going to happen. If you're new to the channel, take a second, hit that subscribe button, and let's jump into update number 1. My sister-in-law Laura, if you can remember, hates Irish people. I'm Irish, and when she learned I was marrying her brother, she did everything she could in her power to end the relationship. The joke's on her because we've been married for years now, and it came out recently her son was marrying an Irish girl too, though Laura thought Mary was an English girl the entire time. After James told the truth, Laura went ballistic. She ends up calling James several times and kept harassing him about marrying an Irish woman. One time she called me and I didn't answer. It might have been immature, but before Laura could start berating me, I said something I've been wanting to say to her for ages now. I guess you're not so superior, now that your son's married a dirty Irish woman, She called me a name, but it didn't deter me. And we knew about Mary for weeks before you did. You were played like a fiddle, you fool. She starts to cuss me out, but I hung up on her. I knew it was immature of me to do this, but like I said, I could not resist. This is something I wanted to say to her for a while now because she deserved it. Michael got an earful from Laura as well, however, he told me he didn't blame me for saying what I'd said. James wasn't even angry with me. It felt so good to get it off my chest, and still I wasn't going to do anything like this again under any circumstances. Going down to her level was super upcoming of me. Besides, the more I taunted her, the more issues it might cause for the rest of the family, and out of everyone, I was most worried about James. This was his mother, and she might be a terrible person, but from what I'd seen, Laura did seem like a decent mom. Of course, if Laura was willing to cut off her son for this, then it did not make her a good mom. The wedding's coming, so that this is going to bring about a whole new wave of drama. I know Laura's going to try her darndest just to ruin it for James, because in her mind, he can't marry his fiancée Mary. I don't want him to have to go through what I did for my own wedding. While I was able to deal with it, it took a while, and all I know is Laura can do whatever she wants, but she is not going to stop the wedding. It's going to happen whether she likes it or not. Update number 2. Sister-in-law crashes the wedding rehearsal. So, I just got home from the rehearsal dinner, and let me tell you what happened. It's crazy. I can't believe the lengths my sister-in-law's willing to go just to prevent her son from getting married to an Irish woman. Everything was all right at first. Michael and I arrived at the rehearsal dinner, and all of us were having a good time. Laughing, making good memories, the food was delicious. The decorations were good, and everything was just really awesome. I couldn't have asked for a better rehearsal dinner to attend. Then, about an hour before it was supposed to end, we started hearing shouting from outside. Before we could even react, Laura burst into the room and starts going straight towards Mary, and she was screaming at her. telling her that there's no way she was going to let some Irish woman marry into her family. So at this moment, James stood up and told his mom to leave. Her husband, my brother-in-law, was hanging out near the door very, very awkwardly. I bet that he was the one to drive her here too. As much as I liked my brother-in-law, he did have to stand up to my sister-in-law. He just let her walk all over him, though, at the same time. When a sister-in-law tried to take a swing at Mary, my brother-in-law grabbed her and told him that they had to leave now before the police or somebody was called. This was a strong possibility, especially since she tried to hurt Mary. Mary had gotten up and was seeking comfort from her parents, and I could only sigh in relief once Laura was taken out by her husband, but let me tell you, she fought him. At one point, it seemed like she did even hit him in her attempt to get away. So James blocks the door. It was a private dining area they rented out in a restaurant, so we could not keep it like this for long. But if it kept Laura from getting back inside, then you know what? I think it's worth it. For a few minutes, we just sat there listening to Laura absolutely scream from the outside of the restaurant. So, you know what? Until somebody else called the police for a noise complaint. Some of us, like me, watched from the window as the police told her she either has to go or she's going to be arrested. Laura did end up leaving. Much to my dismay, she was not arrested. I just wanted her to suffer a little bit after all the crap that she just pulled. How could a grown woman continue to act like such a child? I doubt this was the update you were expecting. Hell, it wasn't the update I expected to give. The next update I thought I would give would be whatever happened at the wedding. But for her to show up at the rehearsal dinner was not what I expected. As she left, James and Mary talked. I was wondering if they were discussing whether or not that they should still go through with the wedding. They told us that they were still going through with the wedding and nobody was going to stop them from spending their entire life together. Even if it was James' mother. I did suggest that they elope like Michael and I did, but they told me that they didn't want to do that. They wanted to stand up in front of their family and friends to declare their love for one another. Well, whatever they wanted to do is up to them. The family's going to support them no matter what. However, one thing is for certain. I know Laura is going to try to ruin the wedding. There's no way that she's going to stop just today. Well, I'll update you guys soon enough. Update number 3. Sister-in-law does not give up. Hey guys, if you're reading this and guessed that sister-in-law was going to start her crap by trying to crash the wedding, then you are correct. First, we had the actual wedding where they said their vows, and it was a small little church. But sister-in-law simply never showed up. You know what, we were thankful at first, but surprised. I kept glancing at the door, expecting that she was going to show. James explained that his father had told him that he was going to make sure his mother did not leave the house for the day. I had no idea how he was going to stop him, but hey, if it kept her from ruining James's wedding, then so be it. After the vows were said, we went across town to where the after party was supposed to take place. I was excited because it looked great. Whoever James and Mary got to plan and decorate their wedding did a hell of a good job. At some point during the wedding, I was getting cold and just realized I had to grab a jacket. So I told Michael I was going to head out of the car to get my sweater. I'm glad I decided to bring one just in case, and while I was going towards the car, a very familiar vehicle passed me. It was Laura's car. She did not notice me and just drove past, going straight towards the venue. Before I even knew what I was doing, I called and texted my husband to warn him. I don't know how she got her husband, but she was on her way to cause havoc right there at the wedding. Michael thanked me for letting him know and just hung up the phone. I grabbed my sweater before running back to the venue just to avoid getting into a fight with Laura. I went around the long way and came back. So, to make a long story short, some of Mary's family went to the front door to act as a bouncer. They were her brothers specifically, and Laura tried to push her way through. But they refused to let her in, and Mary's brothers were all very tall and broad-shouldered, whereas Laura was smaller. There was no way that she was going to be able to make her way onto the venue to ruin the wedding anyways. Well, during her tirade, I heard her mentioning my name and saying that this was all my fault, and you know what? All I could do was roll my eyes. It was ridiculous that Laura was still trying to blame me for this. The only thing that I had done was love Michael and want to start a family with him. How did that make this any of my fault? Eventually, the police had to be called and sister-in-law was forcibly removed from the property. It threw a dent in the celebration, but I have to say that Mary handled it like a champion. She kept her head held high and made it clear that this party was going to continue even with the disturbance that was caused by Laura. I made a joke that the reason Mary was so tough was because she was an Irish woman. This got a lot of laughs out of everyone, but hey, I did mean what I said, you know. Only an Irish woman would be able to put up with all this crap and not go insane from all the stress. After we got home, I had no idea how sister-in-law made out. I mean, even her parents were past the point of defending her, and I guess if Laura acted that way towards their son's wife, it's okay. But against their grandson, Laura's actual son, well, that's a different story. I was pretty bitter towards my in-laws, but try not to let it bother me too much. Michael always stood up for me, so that was all that really mattered to me. Final update. Brother-in-law is sick of sister-in-law's crap. Hey guys, honestly I thought the last update was going to be the last one for me. I mean, the wedding, it went off without an absolute hitch. So I didn't think that there was ever even going to be a need to come back here, but let me tell you, some things that have, well, happened. It's wild how all this had gone down because I never thought that it actually would happen. It came out soon after sister-in-law tried to crash the wedding that she locked her husband in the bathroom. That's right, he had to smash the window to get out, and by the time he did, we already had the situation under control. Things had been going all right that day. Sister-in-law was just behaving and acting like she was truly sorry. However, when he went to the bathroom, she made it so he would not be able to come out by blocking the door. He was without his cell phone, so there was no way to contact us to let us know that she had locked him in. My brother-in-law, well, he just kept shouting for Laura to let him out, not to do this, please. But she said she had to make sure this wedding was not going to happen. And if it happened, then she was going to have to convince their son to get a divorce from the dirty Irish woman he married. So, this is how she managed to get the venue where we were having the after-wedding party. My father-in-law and mother-in-law said that Laura ended up spending the night in jail until she was released without incident. She came home and brother-in-law told her that he could not take her crap anymore. He said in no uncertain terms that they were getting a divorce. Well, again, it might make me a little immature, however. I cannot help but feel Laura deserved it after everything that she's done. Plus, it was about to be damn time my brother-in-law got his act together and divorced her. For too long, he had just stood by and let her walk all over him, as well as everybody around her. Again, my sister-in-law seemed to blame me out of everyone. I was the one who brought this plague onto her family. I should be sorry for ruining her life, and I wanted to block her, but instead I went online and bought a huge Irish flag. Then I made sure that it was sent directly to the house. Petty, yeah, but I wanted to show my sister-in-law that she might not like the fact that there was Irish in her family, but we were here to stay. So, the last contact I had with her was a huge message about how I was so disrespectful. It was at that point that I blocked her, and I have not heard from her since, guys. My brother-in-law is continuing with the divorce. He's currently staying with James and Mary, which is good for him. I know that he mentioned that he actually might just let her have the house and everything in it because he wanted to have a clean breakup from her. Honestly, I wouldn't really blame him for doing that. Who would want to be involved with Laura any more than you have to be? Who knows what's going to happen with Laura anyways? All I know is that Michael and I are preparing to move to Ireland after I get a job offer there. He can work remotely, so he's totally on board with the move. Much to my relief. Well, the best thing is, well, we'll put a lot of distance between Laura and me. Sure, the whole family doesn't talk with her anymore, but the farther away I am from her, the better. It wasn't like I set out with the intention of going back to Ireland. This job offer I got was just really good. Whatever ends up happening to Laura is her own fault. She did it to herself because she was so hateful, so you know what? She deserves no pity. Have you ever had the experience of owning everything in the world, only to watch it fall apart just because human trust and love are fickle things and change with slight provocation? Well, I've had the first-hand experience of possessing everything a woman can desire and then losing it all in front of my own eyes, despite trying to hold on to it to the very end. When I met John, I'd only been 24 years old, and I'd been during university exam days when two fools caught themselves reading under the lamplights after the lights were turned off in the dormitories. Both of us were business and administration students, and John was my senior by a year. It wasn't love at first sight. No, we fell for each other after studying together night after night after night, and when John graduated, he took different jobs around the campus for a year. Just to stay close to me at the moment I graduated, we moved in together, just as John had secured a job in a company's management location. Suddenly, life had become too perfect for me, and we spent 5 years together. Before tying the knot, I became his lawful wife. John was very close to his family and often visited them with me or without me. I became close to Sarah, but there was something about her that kept me from opening up to her as a friend would. Caleb was nice, a caring guy who never differentiated between me and his own sister. The four of us had been friends until we weren't. Before marriage, John and I had not faced any problems in our relationship, but things took an ugly turn right after we returned from our honeymoon and visited John's family. Where I'd been excited to become a part of the Stevens family, I was surprised at the sudden change in their behavior, especially that of Sarah's. I didn't pay much attention to her because I was happy with John. We just became official and begun our lives together. Then, after 3 years of marriage, John had begun acting frustrated around me. At first, I was confused and I wondered if I'd done something that he simply did not like. But I knew that it wasn't how he was. Whatever bothered him, he used to tell me instead of keeping it in his heart and becoming detached. That's how we'd survive so many years together. We'd face every single problem head on and had to learn to lean on each other through thick and thin. And that's why this change in behavior has just come to shock me. Well, after a couple weeks of bearing his frustration, I decided it's time to confront him. That's when he burst out. All the pent-up frustration and anger towards me was released, and I simply could not believe the words that he said. Well, he accused me of cheating on him with not one but 2 guys. He was absolutely furious to find out that I had been such a woman, and had successfully deceived him for many years. The accusation was too harsh for me to even want to accept, and despite myself, I could not say a word. I was shocked, stunned, absolutely horrified. John took my silence as acceptance of all the accusations. Then he told me that he was confused about why I was even with him. When I'd pulled myself out of the initial shock that I had, well, I demanded that he tell me from where he heard such appalling lies, and how on earth had he even believed something like that about me, his wife, and the love of his life, as he had so many times before said. After a slight hesitation, he told me how his sister, Sarah, Sarah's seen me with a man. I'd been furious and outright rejected John's claims, but I was a couple weeks late. I had no idea what Sarah had fed him all this time. He kept insisting that he trusted his sister because she had proof. Instead of further discussing the matter with John, I decided to approach Sarah herself. I'd wanted to know what she'd seen and what made her think that I was secretly meeting somebody behind my husband's back. I just wanted to know what made her hurl such accusations in my directions. After so many years of being part of the family, what had I done so wrong that she had taken such a cruel step to me? I honestly just didn't know. Now, here's another mistake I'd made. I did not get her alone to talk. Instead, I blurted out the question at the dinner table with my mother-in-law and younger brother-in-law in attendance. I still remember that awkward silence that had been fallen, and how Sarah had met each and every question staring with sorrow heavy on her face. It's been an act. I'd been a fool to believe her. Sarah had asked me about the man I'd met twice outside the office. At first, I didn't understand who she could even be talking about since I dealt with many very important clients, and I handled all their accounts. But when I realized that she's been talking about Mr. Peter Harrison, a VIP customer of the bank that I've been working at, I'd met him inside and outside my office many times, and that's where Sarah got the bright idea that I was secretly involved with somebody else. Instead of confronting me about what she had witnessed, she spun a tale of lies around a grain of truth. I tried to clear my name by telling my in-laws about Mr. Harrison, even risking the violations of the terms of confidential agreement signed between me and the clients. I should have realized that it wasn't going to be enough, not when Sarah had talked about me to all members of the family. She'd fed them her imagination and her own interpretations. My in-laws focused on the name instead of the context, and when I tried to tell them that Mr. Harrison had just been a client that I've been handling the case of, they believed that I've been doing some shady business with a rich guy. When I'd realized that my words had absolutely no impact on my husband or his mood at the dinner table, I decided to clear the air once we were alone. I was absolutely just baffled at his behavior anyways, and his simple lack of interest in me when I started discussing the subject again. My life for my husband had blinded me. I took his silence as his trust was restored in me, and when he came back to our apartment after spending the weekend at his mother's, John's behavior simply did not change. It was more confusing than ever, and one night I'd planned to do something I had not done before. I'd unblocked his phone as he'd slept and went through his messages and emails. Sure enough, Sarah was telling him all this stuff about me. She'd shared some photos of my clients with a couple of them in comfortable settings. She clicked them at such angles that they were easy to misinterpret. In an absolute rage, I had not thought twice before sending warning messages to my sister-in-law from my husband's phone. I told her that if she kept up with her lies, I was not going to let her be. Sarah had not dared reply when the phone was in my hand. But the next day, John was furious at me. He accused me of going through his personal belongings without permission when I'd been the one acting out. What? I dared him to go through my records as well if he suspected me. It's been a mistake that still haunts me even today, but in my defense, I had not thought that Sarah would play such a cheap trick. Sarah, see, she has been far more creative than I could give credit to her for. I don't know how, but she'd left a string of messages on my phone from a number unknown, and John had been the first one to read them in my phone's archive. In my defense, I didn't know whose number it was, and I hadn't replied to any of them, but everything that was mentioned in the message was too much to ignore. The adult content on the messages was clearly from someone who knew me well, and I'd been sure that it's been Sarah. John moved out of our apartment after that, and back with his family without giving me a chance to even utter an explanation, and I had nothing to tell him either. Later, I tried to contact his mom and his younger brother, but both of them told me that they're simply disappointed in me for hurting John the way that I did. They were mad at me for cheating on him, for seeking other men behind his back. They refused to listen to my protest and explanations and told me to never contact them again. The last message John left for me was that both of us have been together for a long time, and it was about time we took a break from seeing each other and see where we stood after that. It's been very hard for me to believe that something like that would happen to someone like me, the woman who'd given so much for the man she loved, only to lose his trust and affection to a lie. It'd been too much for me to take, and I'd found myself struggling with acute depression. John and I spent 3 months apart, and during that time we got to talk only once. By then I could tell there was no saving my marriage because John's mind was full of Sarah's poison to the brim. There had been no room for me left in his heart. That's when we decided to divorce and part ways. Our divorce was settled with little to no drama. John had wanted everything he'd spent on me and given to me back, honestly. It hurt me a lot, but I complied with his request because somehow I was still in love with him. When I'd handed over my share of the apartment and everything he'd purchased for me, including the gifts, I never turned back. But that did not mean I'd move on. It's been 2 years, and for 2 years I've tried to date and meet new people, but I can't. My heart still lies shattered, and I can't move on no matter how hard I try. He'd left me alone, a woman who did not have any peace or place or anyone to go to. And whenever I think about John and everything that I've lost, I end up thinking about the woman who'd been mastermind behind the ploy against me. Sarah Stevens. It's the reason I'm here on this platform, sharing my story that I've kept to myself for a very long time. I hold her wedding invitation in my hand, the one I stole yesterday when I spotted her. She was at the station when I saw her. I'd been curious to know how the woman who destroyed my life was doing, and I could barely restrain myself from lashing out at her when I saw her glowing with happiness. It looked like she had the whole world at her feet. Sarah Stevens is in love, and she's getting married to Mason Day, who's John's friend and a boss at work. No matter how hard I try, I can't let Sarah get her happy ending after ruining me. I can't do it. I have a few ideas on how to get back at her. It's all I can think about since yesterday, and I know that I can't have more regrets and missed opportunities on my conscience again. I'm gonna go ahead with my plan, or two, but I find myself wondering if I'll be wrong to get back at her. If not, then what can I do? Update number 1. Hey guys, there are many reprimanding comments on my first post, and I understand what each and every one of you have been trying to tell me. Revenge isn't going to bring me happiness that I've lost. I know. I'm also aware that playing Sarah's game on her won't make me any different from her. But guys, let me tell you, I'm restless. I can't erase her radiant face from my mind. How could she even smile like that after doing something so cruel to me? I just respected the people who tried to make me look at the bright side of all this experience I'm going through. In the comment section, you guys were very helpful. Yes, I parted ways from John before he could leave me in the future for something else. If not this, because he's been a weak man. But this has nothing to do with my desire to exact revenge on Sarah. Those who advised me to let Sarah begin her new life because karma's going to get her back for what she's done. I ask you, what is karma? Once I'd believe in it too, but I've waited for 2 years, and it doesn't look like Stevens is going to face it anytime soon, unless I deliver karma right to her doorstep. And that's what I've already set my plan into motion to do. See, Sarah Stevens thinks that she owns the world. She does. She relies on others to do her stuff, to serve her, and in doing so, she doesn't realize the amount of information she left behind. This is exactly what has worked in my favor so far. You see, after my first post, I submitted 3 weeks leave request at my workplace. It's about darn time I take break from work, which I've been doing like crazy to keep my mind from wandering in the past. When it was granted, I began tailing Sarah as she went around the city, just arranging for her dream wedding. That's where I'll hit her. For Sarah Stevens, the event is very important. She's investing more than she's ever done for anything else. Often I see her brothers tag along with her, and they too are holding back when it comes to their, dear sister's wedding. Well, I plan to show them her real face if they haven't seen it already. Yesterday I got my hands on a list of Sarah's bookings for her special day. She'd left her stuff with her helper Jenna, whom she'd hired for the wedding duration to accompany her. She's a poor girl who's absolutely terrified of Sarah, and after a few coaxing words and some cash, she let me take the pictures and her booking confirmations. I have her wedding band contract details, the menu she's deciding to use for the wedding caterers, information on her deal with the photographers and videographers, as well as the details about the outdoor wedding venue that she has booked. That's right. It's a beautiful place, and it just seems like yesterday when John and I visited the same venue. I trusted her then because I had no reason to. Only now I realize that she's been playing the game for a long time. But why? Well, I'm going to find out. Well, this is the update for now. I've got some calls to make, some plans to overthrow. I'll update you guys soon. Update number 2. Hey everyone. I see a few comments on my last post, but I'm glad to know that there are some who can understand my situation, as well as my intention to get back at Sarah for everything that she's done to me. Only those who suffered a loss, as I have, will be able to understand the nightmare I've been living in for the past few years. See, Sarah's wedding and my scheming to ruin it has become something I look forward to every single day. After years, I feel excited every morning when I wake up. I'm sure that once I get back at Sarah and tell everyone what she's done to me, only then I'll be able to move on. I'm telling you guys, she's an absolute vile woman, and everyone around her should just see her true colors for who she is. She's hurt me without any apparent reason, and God knows how many people she's hurt over the years. I talked about Sarah during therapy, and I talked to my therapist that I believed I'd only be able to move on when Sarah would beg for my forgiveness, and the only way to make it possible is to make her experience a loss. As expected, my therapist has tried to talk me out of it, but I'd let the thought keep me going, and here I am now. Well, I've set the stage. All that's left is to see how Sarah's events will play out. She hasn't suspected anything so far, nor does her family, and I hope that it'll remain so. After this is done, I know that there's no way John will accept me again, nor will I want to be a part of his life anymore anyways. Well, this is for me to find some peace, and for Sarah to feel what I'd felt all those years ago. I want John to realize the mistake that he's made, and live his life with regrets knowing that he's given up on his love, not the other way around. I can't wait for Sarah's big day to come, and I'm going to be there to watch her suffer. Update number 3. Hey guys, so things escalated more than I predicted, by the way. Yesterday was Sarah's big day, and I'd pulled some strings to be there among the guests. I'd put on a vibrant red gown and had let my hair down in loose curls. I'd changed so much over the years that John simply did not even recognize me. Even though he did stop to take a second look, the distance worked in my favor. I tried my best to steer clear of Stevens during the event, or whatever was left of it. When I arrived at the wedding venue, there was a commotion. The guests roamed here and there, confused, with little effort. I'd switched the outdoor setting to indoor, and had reduced much of the decoration. The staff had suspected me, but I had a copy of their deal with Sarah, and our old pictures together to convince them that I was family. Changing the venue had been a far-fetched idea, because the staff could have just contacted Sarah, but to my relief, they had not, as the outdoor venue had gotten booked instantly after I canceled Sarah's booking. Once the guests had settled into my dimly lit hall, the bride and groom's family waited for the wedding band. When it didn't show up, I noticed the family making these frantic phone calls and overheard Caleb talking to them on the phone. Later, All the guests heard the bride shout at her brother to find out who switched the booking date. This matter, had not been dealt with at all. When the family faced another problem, the catering staff, they did not show up and there was no food. So, what do we do now? Within a couple hours, it became evident that the wedding could not go on. The guests had started to leave, they were in a foul mood and kept telling Grace Stevens that they're simply disappointed. That's when I took my chance to make my presence known. The Stevens were shocked to see me, and it did not take long for Sarah to put two and two together. See, she'd known instantly that it was me who decided to ruin her special day. I will never forget the expression on her face, and on John's face. They were horrified and had the guts to be mad at me. That's when I told them to ask what brought the chaos on. I told them to ask Sarah what she's done for me to do something like this to her. Furious, Sarah shouted at me that she'd seen me for who I was, and that's why she made sure to kick me out of her family. I felt as if she'd been jealous of me becoming part of their family, and she was far from feeling apologetic for it. John and Grace had been shocked to hear such truth from Sarah's mouth. She was crying and cursing me while her fiancé stood aside, watching the true face of the woman he was going to marry. When Sarah admitted to everything in front of everybody, I didn't buy it. Not when she kept insisting that she's done her brother a favor by getting someone like me out of his life. At the exchange, John had turned to me with an apology and regret written all over his face. That had been my cue to leave. I've avenged the hurt that Sarah caused me, the humiliation I'd felt in front of John's family and friends. I've lived in agony all these years, and now I simply feel exhausted, empty. The revenge plan had consumed my thoughts for days, and now that I've gotten back at her, I don't know where to turn my focus to next. John called me last night. At first, I did not attend to his call, but when he kept calling and sending messages, I had no choice but to hear what he had to say. Yeah, as expected, he had nothing but apologies. He'd let anger get the better of him, and his blinding trust in his sisters had made him believe her. I listened to everything he had to say without saying a word because I had none. Nothing. I'd cry all the tears and said all the words in my heart. I simply had nothing to offer him. When he was done, I told him to never call me again because I've moved on. I'd like to thank the people who actually tried to understand me instead of trying to stop me from ruining Sarah's life. In my defense, I saved her fiancé from a lifetime of betrayal. I believe if a person can be selfish enough to destroy somebody's life, somebody close, then that person's capable of destroying so many more. Once a liar, always a liar. Update number 4. Well, after the last update, I had not thought that I'd be back here again, but it turns out my story's far from over yet. As I'd suspected, Sarah was not truly sorry for me. Not when she was cursing and crying in front of me on her big day. It's all been her desperation to set things right ever since then. Sarah Stevens came to see me earlier today when I was at work. My bosses were not happy, but I just requested half leave and got Sarah out of my workplace as fast as humanly possible. She told me that she was surprised at the way I ruined her wedding because she simply never thought I'd have the guts to do something like that. It was the first time the two of us were having some sort of decent conversations. And, well, I took the chance and asked the question which has bothered me all these years. Why me? Why? Well, turns out Sarah told me that she's never liked me. I was exactly the type of girl she hated at school and could not tell that I'd trample all over my brother's heart. She'd hated the attention her family paid me, and how I'd been changing their lives. Before me, Sarah had been the daughter of the house. Her brother had been close to her, and her mother had valued her opinions. It all changed when I'd become part of their lives. Her younger brother had tried to befriend me, and Grace began to adore me as her own daughter. Sarah had felt that I was robbing her of all the affection and importance she enjoyed the years. She hated that I was an orphan, and got to play the damsel in distress role for her brother to swoop in and save the day. She didn't want her brother to marry somebody he trusted blindly. She assured me that she would have let us stay married had John taken my side and chose to believe me instead of her. That was the honest truth. Even I could not deny that. Sarah had tried to prove that I wasn't worthy of her brother, but her scheming confirmed that it was John who wasn't worthy of me. After telling me all this, Sarah told me that it wasn't the reason she'd come to talk. See, she assured me that I've made a big mistake by ruining her wedding, and she was not somebody who would bury the hatchet easily. She told me to keep watching my back. I know what many of you will say after reading this, but in my defense, have I chosen to ignore Sarah and move on with my life, I would not have started this chain of vengeance. She's already hurt me enough, and I have no idea what she'll do to me next. What is truly my fault that things have turned out this way? Guys, please let me know. Update number 5. Final update posted by OP. Hey guys, so the response of my last update's overwhelming, honestly. I had not even expected to see comments from so many people, especially not after what I've done despite you guys trying to talk to me. It's been 3 long weeks since the last update, and let me tell you that Sarah did come after me, but she had not been as careful as before. She's already taken me down once, and I believe she thought it would be no problem once again. This time, karma did get to her without me doing anything. It's true that anger and the fire of vengeance blinds a person and makes him do the things he never would have done otherwise. In her attempt to get back at me, Sarah had resorted to cheap tricks. A week ago, she visits my house when I was asleep. The house had been locked, so she had not been able to get in. But my neighbors had spotted her hovering around my house. They tried to call me and ask if I knew her, but my phone had been on silent. According to my neighbors, when she had not found a way to get in, Sarah had targeted my car instead. She tried to pour sugar into my car's gas tank, and the kids from the house next door recorded a video of her in the act, while their parents had called the police. I'd come to know the entire incident only when the police knocked at my door and asked if I knew Sarah. See, it turns out Sarah has tried to lie to the police. She told them she was my friend and was just playing a harmless trick on me. I told the police that she's lying. As a result, the police ended up dragging Sarah to the police station. I've been relieved for a while, but when John tried calling me again and asking for settling Sarah's case, I called him an absolute coward and refused to even help Stevens at that point. Taking advantage of Sarah's captivity, I filed a lawsuit against her. What she's done to me falls under criminal law, and she can end up in jail for it. I know many of you will just insist on letting her be, but I don't know. Let me assure you that she was not even slightly apologetic. She tried vandalism, and I doubt she'd let things slide that once she's out and about. I don't trust her because of the hatred in her heart and the extent that she can go to destroy somebody else's life. Today it was me, tomorrow it could be anyone. Seeing that Mason's day has called off the engagement as well, and things are hard for John at work, I believe that Mason has also seen something in his fiancée to take such a steep step. If a man truly loves a woman and trusts her, he'll stand against the world for her. John had not done that for me, and Mason had not done that for Sarah either. But in the end, well, both of us have lost the men we loved, and the family's trust for everything we've done. I don't regret getting back at Sarah. Never will, because if anything, my vengeance has brought many things to light. If Sarah's truly innocent and is willing to repent of her mistakes, she can enjoy her free life. Otherwise, she'll have to spend some time behind bars or in a rehabilitation center reserved for prisoners. Whatever happens in the future, well, I hope Sarah realizes her mistakes and vows to never repeat them again. Maybe both of us will find happiness one day. Until then, accept my gratitude for the response and support of all that you have shown. I'm at the verge of walking out of my marriage. Don't blame me though, because I have been pushed out of it long ago. I got married to my husband Lucas 6 years ago, and we are yet to have kids. While I'm infertile, Lucas and I met while we were in school. He's from a rich home, but that did not affect the way he related with other people. He's a quiet person who did not want problems in any way, and he did his best to avoid issues that led to disagreements even when he was in the right. Lucas had a twin sister called Rachel. They were identical, but that was just in looks. Rachel was way different from Lucas. She was toxic and entitled whenever she was around Lucas. He never complained though, and that's because they had always been close right from when they were young. The bond that they shared was indeed strong. I did not object to it during the early years of our marriage, and I tried to be the lady who would really not get married to a guy and separate him from his family. Rachel would always show up unannounced at our house, and though I was not comfortable with it, I simply overlooked it. Rachel was not married, and she still lived with her parents, who were nice people. Rachel claimed to be a remote worker, but I can't say what she did. Besides, she always called on Lucas for money, and Lucas supported not just her, but their other siblings as he was the most successful of them all. Yeah, back to my infertility story. Lucas and I visit a medical consultant, and after a series of testing, they discovered my womb was damaged. The news hurt me, and I was in an emotional place of pain where everything just simply irritated me. It was during this time that Rachel showed up unannounced at our home with her bags to spend the weekend. Rachel's presence in my home got me irritated. Her toxicity and entitlement began showing up in my face, and what I ordinarily overlooked in the past now got me angry. This was as a result of where I was emotionally, and anyone who had a sense would understand. The next week came, and Rachel was still around. It was on a Monday, and I was on leave. Lucas and I were discussing when Rachel came in and requested Lucas give her a certain amount of money by the month's end as she needed to do something. The amount she called was huge, and it's not something you would give without asking what it's going to be used for. I asked Rachel what she needed such a huge amount of money for, and she just sharply rebuked me, saying, "That's none of my business." Well, I was offended, but I said nothing. I did not want to create a scene, and Lucas said that he would see what he could do by the end of the month. He left for work, and I decided to talk to Rachel. I was already struggling to hold back my anger, and I hoped it would go away when she apologized for how she had behaved, but that was not the case. I told Rachel that I simply felt offended by the way that she had spoken to me, but she said I should not have stuck my nose in her business. What rubbish! She was telling me I had no right to interfere in my husband's business, and I was just mad. But I still tried talking to her with a bit of respect. I told her that Lucas was my husband, and there was nothing wrong with a woman being concerned about where her husband's money went. After all, what belonged to my husband could be considered to be mine since we both shared everything. Rachel immediately called me a gold digger who wanted to take the wealth of her brother. She accused me of trying to keep Lucas from helping her and her siblings the way that she wanted. It was wrong for her to accuse me of something out of that magnitude, and my husband never did for my siblings the kind of things he did for Rachel and her siblings. And I've never for once complained or stood in his way. I told her it was not my intent to turn the face of her brother away from her or hold back his hand from helping her. I was only concerned as the amount she was asking for was a lot. The discussion was soon turning into an argument, and I decided to leave since I was getting accused rather than apologized to. I turned to leave, and that's when she said what baffled me. "Rachel, said rather than hoard my husband's wealth, I was to focus my energy on giving him an heir who would inherit it. Her statement was too painful to ignore, and I told her that rather than spend her life begging her brother for assistance, she should go get a life and let us live in peace. Rachel was now so mad and she slapped me. Rachel's older than me, but like they say, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. I returned the slap with two of mine, and a fight ensued, and I was simply overpowered by her, and she left me with some bodily injuries, though she had some of her own. I was left in anger and pain, and I called Lucas, who was now at work, but he was not picking up. I thought about driving down to his place of business, but I decided to not let my anger lead me into creating a scene at my husband's workplace, as that was exactly what I wanted to do, but I waited till Lucas returned home. Lucas came home, and turned out the reason he had not picked up my call wasn't because he had a lot of work to do. It was because his sister had beat me to it and called to tell him a made-up story of how I attacked her, and that she asked him for money. From the way Lucas sounded, I could tell he had fallen for the lie. I explained to him what exactly happened, and I even showed him the bite mark which his sister had inflicted on me. And I expected him to apologize and deal with the situation very well. My husband apologized for the injury which I had sustained, but he said he was not going to call his sister to caution her or shout at her, as I made the mistake of starting the fight with her. And I quote you this: "She is not just my sister or your sister-in-law, she's equally your elder, and you should have spoken with me rather than confront her." He even went to note that he had observed what happened in the morning, and if he did not see it as a big deal to act on, why was I supposed to do so? Lucas's statement or action did nothing to help the situation at hand. I replied that he was not going to act on it because he did not understand the part of the role of the husband is to protect his wife against everybody, and that includes his family if necessary. Lucas did not react to my statement. He just walked away, and that got me even more angry. I'm telling ya. His sister had shut me upright in his presence and called me a gold digger, and used my infertility situation to absolutely ridicule me, and went further to inflict injuries on me, and the only thing my husband could do was to walk away. I ignored him, but I was not going to let the situation die down like that. I decided I was going to see my in-laws, tell them about how Rachel was tearing my husband and me apart. So, I went to see them, and I did this behind my husband's back. I knew he would not be happy when he found out, as he wanted peace and not trouble with anybody. But peace can sometimes be gotten after conflict. Well, my in-laws are nice people. I got to the house and they were shocked the moment they saw me. They asked if Lucas had started beating me. Their tone showed they were willing to deal with him if he was, and I broke down in tears, and my mother-in-law tried to console me. My tears were not an act, it was genuine. I informed them that Rachel was responsible for the injuries which they could see on my body, and my husband had refused to address the issue. I narrated to them how Rachel had taunted me using my condition of infertility, and how she accused me of discouraging Lucas from helping his siblings. My in-laws were so mad at Rachel, as they had repeatedly told her and her siblings in the past to allow Lucas and I to build our home in peace, and not act like his home was theirs. Their anger, however, was much towards Lucas, who had wanted to sweep the whole thing under the carpet. They promised they would deal with the situation. I got home, awaiting the actions of my in-laws, and Lucas got home that evening and asked if I had visited his parents to tell them about the issue that transpired between Rachel and me. I did not deny the fact, as I suspected Rachel must have been aware of my visit and alerted him. Lucas was offended, and he asked why would I go behind his back to his parents, who have now called for a family meeting to resolve the whole issue. I simply just could not hide my feelings of resentment. I told him to not bark at me for doing something he was supposed to have done, and that is fighting to keep our marriage at peace. We went to his parents' house over the weekend. Everybody was present as it was a family gathering, but they were aware of the reason for the gathering. My father-in-law began by telling everyone present that he had set the example of what a husband and father should be for them, and stated he expected nothing less. He went on to tell them that an issue was brought by me, and he asked me to go ahead and re-say the things that I said. I started by reminding my in-laws about the recent discovery of my infertility and how I was struggling to deal with the pain. I then recounted my ordeal with Rachel to everybody present. Her siblings were not pleased with her, and it was not the first time they would be hearing it, as Rachel had given them her version before then. One thing I was happy about was that her siblings knew how toxicity, it was too well with her. Lucas, however, was docile. He had his head bowed down as I spoke, and his parents shot him a very disappointed look. After I was done with my narration, my father-in-law inquired from Rachel if what I was saying was actually true, and Rachel simply just could not wait to speak. She started trying to sell her lie. She told everybody present that she was not wrong in calling me a gold digger, as that is exactly what I was. She was so good at twisting things. She said that I was not the first infertile lady in the whole universe, and there were other means of getting children, but I simply refused to do so as I did not love Lucas enough to start up a family with him. She claimed my goal was to divorce Lucas and divert his money and in my direction. Wow, words are pretty powerful. I looked at the faces of her siblings, and it was though they were almost falling for the lie. I immediately broke down. I told everybody present there that I had never asked Lucas to deny them help, even though my siblings were not helped by him as much as they were. This was a fact Lucas, who was present, could attest to. Rachel shouted at me, but my father-in-law rebuked her. He then proceeded to ask Lucas what his take was on the matter and how he handled or intended to handle it. The question just revealed that Lucas had not taken his father's training and examples seriously. Lucas said he told me to let the matter be, and he was not willing to take sides with one family against the other. All he wanted, according to him, was peace. Peace? My husband was talking about peace when I was in a physical and emotional pain. How did he expect me to shake hands with his sister and act like all was well when she still felt like I deserved the treatment she had given me? His response angered his father, who immediately shouted at him. Lucas's mother then began reprimanding Rachel that she had always advised her to give my husband and me some space. The brother she knew was still the same, but had a wife who, has to be his priority, you know. She noted that Rachel was wrong to have beaten me up in my own husband's house and used my infertility to taunt me. I fell in love afresh with my mother-in-law, and she said I had done nothing wrong in trying to find out what Rachel wanted such a huge amount of my husband's money for. My father-in-law did not address Rachel's misbehavior, as his wife had said enough. He proceeded to tell Lucas how he was failing as a husband, and he pointed out that Lucas was supposed to stand up for me no matter what. He then warned Rachel to stay clear of my marriage, and even demanded she apologize to me right then and there. Rachel was pained. I could see it right here in her face, but she had no option. She reluctantly offered me a half-baked apology, and one that meant little to me. Before leaving the house that day, my father-in-law asked Lucas to spend time making up his attitude when we got home. We got home and Lucas was not going to say or did anything to me for the next 3 days. I finally confronted him on the cold attitude and distance from me, and he said he's simply embarrassed because I had embarrassed him in front of his parents and siblings, who now think of him as a man who cannot handle his home. I did not offer an apology for telling his parents he was a coward and a failure who was not man enough to defend me when I needed it the most. I just kept mute till he noted that his sister had been right in asking him to divorce me. An infertile wife, according to her, who can paint a man to be useless in front of his family. Well, I was surprised that his sister was still giving him advice, and the moron was receiving it. I knew I had lost my husband to his sister. He worked out on me, and the malice resumed. Different thoughts began running across my mind about the possibility of waking up one morning to discover Lucas wants a divorce. I decided I would walk out of the marriage, but not empty-handed, not at all. I thought long and hard before finally coming up with a game plan. I simply planned to make peace. And, well, I know it sounds absurd, and that's why it would work. I tried looking for ways to pacify my husband, Lucas. Absolutely. But he just kept providing stubbornness and all, and what he does not know is that I have disconnected him emotionally. After exhausting every means to get back his attention, I did something I never imagined I would do. I begged Rachel. Yes, if you've been following me, then you know that offering Rachel an apology or even making peace with her is something I would never dream of doing. But it was the path I had tread in my plan. It was ever going to be successful. I had to do it. I reached out to Rachel and pleaded, and, well, we met at an eatery. She was hesitant but agreed to do so after I had pleaded with her. During our meeting, I never brought up the fact that I knew she had been advising my husband to throw me out as I was, quote, barren and rebellious. This is even after her parents had sternly asked her to put some distance between herself and us. Rather than start up a fight with her, I began telling her I was sorry. Sorry for all that happened between us, and I claimed I was ready to move past it and focus on a great future with my sister-in-law by my side. I could see her ego. Well, it was starting to swell, and she fell for my fake apology, and I then went ahead to tell her that my husband had not been talking to me ever since. I did not blame her for that, however. I rather reaped the blame upon myself, and the first sentence that came out of Rachel's mouth was that she was glad I had realized I was the one troubling the peace of the family all along. I just kept quiet while she enjoyed her moment of glory shaming me. After she was done with her long talk, she finally agreed to help me talk to Lucas. She came over to the house later in the day while Lucas was around, and she told him I had finally come to my senses and was ready for peace. It was then my husband decided to look in my direction again. So, I'm married to a husband who's overly attached to his sister. We're now one big happy family, living together in peace. Rachel now comes to the house where she spends days, and I just try to act like her presence does not disgust me. She carries herself like she's the owner of the house, and I don't act like it means anything to me. I even go as far as seeking her opinion on matters that don't concern her. My husband Lucas is now cool with me, as there was peace between his sisters and me. He's not talked about anything of the divorce ever since. Rachel is currently in my house, and she would be leaving in 3 days. I plan on telling you about my plans to get surrogacy. I want her to buy the idea, so with her by my side, it would be easier getting her brother to agree with it. Once our child is born, I would then file for divorce on the grounds of emotional torture and irreconcilable differences. This would make the court compel him into paying child support. And, of course, alimony. I would leave the marriage, but with my child and money. Remarriage is a no for me, but I won't live a lonely life since, I'm going to have a child by my side. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. Today's story is so wild. I mean, the ending of that first part is absolutely insane with OP's plan, but I have some exciting news. I have compiled all 4 updates, and I'm telling you guys right now, things are about to get twisted. If you guys are having a great day, let me know about it in the comment section. Hey, if you're having a bad day, tell me what's going wrong. I hope you guys are having a good day, though. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for daily videos, and let's see what's going on with OP and Rachel. Update number 1. I met with Rachel recently, and I told her I decided to get a child via surrogacy. I claimed her talk in the past about not giving her brother an heir inspired my decision. Rachel smiled and listened as I told her that I was yet to discuss it with my husband. She felt important that I had considered speaking with her about it first. It was a strategic move on my part, and I knew if I raised the issue of surrogacy with my husband, he would probably want to get his sister's opinion about it, and she opposed it. The whole kick her out and get a new wife advice could start up again. Rachel welcomed the idea. She noted there was nothing wrong with surrogacy, which had helped barren women like me keep their homes together. Each time we spoke, she always found a way to rub it in my face so that I could not conceive a child via a natural process. I agreed with her even though I was pained. She went ahead to say that she would help me talk to my husband and even further look for a suitable surrogate. I feigned happiness and appreciation. I told her it meant a lot to me to always have her around. Rachel's ego had been so inflated, and she said she was glad I was no longer foolish to not see her importance. She just used every single opportunity to subtly annoy me. She came over to our home by the weekend, and we both talked with my husband, Lucas. The stupid man whom I call my husband was not ashamed that our marriage had absolutely just turned into a triangle. He rather said he was glad and sisters were good and on talking terms. It was on that basis that he accepted to go through with the process, and he acknowledged he was too busy to go hunting for a surrogate mother. And that was when Rachel noted that she had already had somebody in mind and would make the introduction very, very soon. Well, we did not need to wait so long to meet the surrogate mother, as Rachel brought her the very next day. The speed with which the surrogate was available made me raise an eyebrow, and it was though she had reached conclusions with her before bringing her over. The would-be surrogate is called Stacy. I was not surprised when I learned she was Rachel's friend. I just knew Rachel was up to something that would enlarge her pockets. Lucas and I were both interested in getting to know Stacy. But Rachel, as usual, was running the show. She vouched for Stacy for her life and claimed that they had been friends for over a decade. According to her, she had chosen Stacy because it was the best way to get a surrogate who you knew on a personal level. Well, she was the one who knew Stacy up close. Lucas and I did not, and it did not matter to Lucas, though. He readily agreed, and I did not object. It's not my business. We could use Rachel's suggested surrogate, but nobody would come close to my child after she must have been born, and I've gotten my divorce from Lucas. We would be meeting in a few days to decide the terms of the contract. Update number 2. The impression Rachel had given us was that we would sit down with Stacy and discuss the terms of the surrogacy. This included the price and rules, which was expected of both parties. Rachel, however, came to the house a few days later without Stacy, and she laid out the terms. It was wrong. It was not professional in any way. Well, the would-be surrogate was supposed to be present, but this was something my husband simply did not question. Rachel was just pushing the whole thing like she wanted a child more than Lucas and I. She began calling out the conditions, which Stacy had given, and it was okay, till she got to the amount that she would charge. To start with, she said Stacy was a human being who should be treated as such, and this was just an opening line to make us bendable to the demands. She went on to say, we would take up the responsibility of providing for all of Stacy's needs from the moment the process began to the moment it ended. Well, that's okay. We expected that. Rachel went further to say that we would accompany Stacy to the weekly doctor appointments which she would be attending. Lucas noted he was pretty busy doing this and that, and I, on the other hand, had a job, but I promised I would take out the time to do it. But hey, the conditions, they're not over yet. She said that we would still keep in touch with the surrogate after the process. We got to the parts where Rachel disclosed the amount Stacy would charge, and it was an absolute staggering amount. $30,000! This was too much. Yes, Lucas was doing great and I had a job, but that amount was way beyond what we had anticipated. This was besides what we would spend on Stacy during the entire period, and we would go ahead and fund the process, but once we're done, we would need to work out our butts just to be able to provide for the child after spending that much. Well, it is Lucas who would need to work his butt off to pay for the child support and alimony, as I would be getting a divorce from him, so hey, I didn't bother. I was surprised when Lucas asked his sister if we could not look for some other surrogate who would charge less. This was actually the first time I'd seen him question or hesitate in taking his sister's opinion. Rachel began trying to sell Stacy to us. She claimed that the amount Stacy was requesting was very normal for the emotional and mental stress which she would go through for 9 whole months. She asked us to see the money as a form of compensation for what she was going to do. Giving us the child I could not give us. I still felt the price was simply too much, but I kept my thoughts to myself. Lucas, on the other hand, just accepted. It hurts that when it comes to his sister Rachel, he does not need to be pushed too much to do something. And Rachel just smiled when Lucas bought her suggestions, and her smile was an indication and a plot she was hatching that was going in her favor. Update number 3. I told you guys during my last update that Rachel was up to something, right? Well, I was correct. She got us to make the agreement official by signing the legal documents, and with the way she was into the whole thing, you would think she was the surrogate. I began attending doctor's appointments with our surrogate Stacy, and Stacy is not as toxic as her friend, but her mouth runs like a tap. She finds it difficult to keep information to herself for too long, and all you need to do is initiate a conversation with her and she would go on talking until your ears would bleed. I was very careful to befriend someone like that, so a friend of Rachel cannot be my friend. I had to play the friendship part though, as she was going to be the surrogate of my child. During one of our visits to the doctor, Stacy was taken in to have an ultrascan so they could see how the child was actually doing. I held her phone while the procedure went on, and Rachel began calling and simply would not stop. As the call became so much, I decided to pick up and tell her that she could not speak with Stacy as she was undergoing a procedure, but I was shocked by what I heard Rachel say. Rachel began shouting over the phone and accusing Stacy of ghosting her. I wanted to explain that I was not Stacy, but Rachel is the kind of person who, when angry, you just simply can't keep quiet till she vented out her anger. She began calling Stacy different kinds of names like a thief, a snake, a backstabbing jerk, and some pretty terrible names that I don't really want to mention. But the moment that she was actually done talking, she cut the call without letting me say a word. I began wondering when her relationship with Stacy had gone so sour. I mean, it's been less than 2 months since she praised Stacy in front of us, and, well, I knew something was wrong, so I waited for Stacy to come out. Stacy finally gets done, and both mother and child were in good shape. I told Stacy and, well, said that Rachel had been trying to reach her, and she said she would call her once she gets home. I then asked her if there was a problem. She initially denied it, but hey, I'm not stupid, so I asked her again why her friend, whom she had absolutely no problems with, would be calling her names. The moment I said so, she got so mad and said Rachel was just a toxic human being, not a friend. She told me that the reason Rachel had accused her of theft was because they had an agreement that Stacy would give her part of the money, which we would pay for her, and Rachel felt she did not want to honor it. I explained to her that since an agreement was in place, then she was to honor it, but she said she could not do so as Lucas and I had not given her the agreed $30,000. The money was going to be paid after the birth of our child, though, and we covered the cost of her living. My curiosity led me into asking the amount, and she said it was half of the money. Half of the money? It meant Rachel was going to be earning as much as Stacy, who was the actual surrogate. Stacy then told me it was Rachel that had suggested they doubled the amount. I shouted at how unfair Rachel was behaving towards her, and that was how Stacy opened up and began telling me about the disgusting, hypocritical things which Rachel did. The interesting part was, what she said was how Rachel was having an affair with her cousin. I was stunned, and my reaction made Stacy keep on talking. She even showed me proof of her discussions with Rachel to back up what she was actually saying, and I assured her my absolute confidentiality and told her we would talk further on the matter later. I'm currently adding a twist to my revenge. Update number 4. Hey guys, so this update would be brief, but I believed it is the most interesting part of the story. The part where everyone who had treated me badly via their toxic or docile nature pays for it. I began spending more time with Stacy just so we would chit-chat. Most of our discussion was centered on Rachel, and Stacy sure had a lot of information about her. I had Stacy send me screenshot after screenshot after screenshot of her chats with Rachel where she talked about her escapades with her cousin. I was equally working behind the scenes to secure my divorce from Lucas, and I told nobody about that, though. I just kept quiet till Stacy had our baby. After my child was born, my husband paid Stacy the agreed amount, and though I had earlier advised her to honor her agreement with Rachel, I now discouraged her from doing so. I told her to relocate and use the money to set herself up for life. She took my advice, and Rachel has not heard from her ever since, and Rachel has been bitter, but she can't tell anyone about it as she would expose herself by doing so. I organized a party for my son, and I took it upon myself to personally invite every member of my husband's family. To make them anticipate the party, I told them it was not just a party where I would be celebrating the birth of my son, but where I would equally celebrate them all for their presence in my life. The day arrived, and the event was held in the home Lucas and I shared. It was on the evening of a weekend. After everyone had settled in, I asked for the attention of the family as I wanted to make a toast. I began by thanking my father-in-law, and it came from the heart. I told them how they were the best in-laws anybody could ever wish to have, and everyone was happy with the way things were going. But I quickly changed the narrative. I told my in-laws that it was a pity their kids, Lucas and his twin sister Rachel, did not take the life lesson on character and responsibility which they had taught them over the years, and everybody looked at me in surprise. I immediately raised a glass to Rachel and the love of her life. Her cousin. I exposed her with the evidence which I collected from Stacy, and while everybody was still in shock, I turned to Lucas and told him that his lovely sister, whom he prioritized over me, had wanted to siphon him of $15,000. He was busy dealing with a shock when I threw divorce papers right at him. I made him understand that he had his sister to thank for it before walking out on them with my child. I went under the radar throughout the time, and the divorce was going on, and my in-laws wanted to reach out to me to simply make peace, but I could not. The divorce proceedings took longer than expected, but it finally ended with the judge mandating Lucas to pay child support and alimony while I got custody of our son. I'm a happy single mother, and marriage is not on my agenda anymore at all. I'm okay though, as I have a child and we're both being taken care of. Hey everyone, you can call me Rachel. This is going to be a long one, so bear with me. I've got a lot of background info for you. First, let me tell you a bit about my sister-in-law, Jane, and her husband, Gerald. Jane is my husband, Arnie's sister. She's a nice girl and she means well, but she's always been a bit ditzy. There's no nicer way to put it. That being said, she's got a heart of gold and she'll do anything to help anybody, especially if she cares about you. Frankly, it's her willingness to help others and live a selfless existence that's landed her in this situation, which I'll get into shortly. Anyways, Jane's been utterly obsessed with her new husband, Gerald, ever since they got married about a year ago. I understand some newlywed excitement. It's normal to be in love, after all. But geez, it seems like you can't have a conversation with Jane anymore without hearing about Gerald. If you ask her what color the sky was, she would have to say what Gerald thought first. It's hard to figure out where Jane ends and Gerald begins, so to speak. As for my husband, Arnie, well, he's had a bad feeling about Gerald from the moment he laid eyes upon him, and I've had a funny feeling about him as well. Plus, even if we did not have odd feelings about Gerald, just the sheer level of attachment Jane has for the guy is textbook unhealthy. But me and Arnie have been having bad feelings about Gerald. It's not enough to get the family talking. He's a handsome, charismatic guy, and from what I can tell, me and my husband are the only ones in the family who don't absolutely love Gerald. So, me and Arnie have always thought it was for the best to just keep our mouths shut on the topic. Sure, Jane can be annoying when all she talks about's Gerald, but I figure it's not my place or even my husband's place to lend our opinion and possibly cause drama. Well, as you might have guessed by the fact that I'm posting this for you all here today, life has a way of forcing you into a drama even when you've done everything you can to avoid it. So, Jane and Gerald had organized a family gathering. Everything was going smoothly, but there was an awkward vibe in the air. Me and my husband had been discussing it in private when suddenly, Gerald came walking around the corner on his cell phone. He was a bit rude to me and Arnie, so we got the hint that he wanted us to move and decided that we would be the best course of action. After quietly talking about how rude and off-putting Gerald always seemed to be towards us, my husband mentioned that he'd forgotten his drink. I told him not to worry and decided I'd go get the drink myself. That was when I saw what I would get all this drama started with. Sitting right there on the counter next to my drink was Gerald's unattended cell phone. I normally would never go through another person's stuff, but the way the phone was placed next to my drink, it's almost as if I felt Gerald wanted to be caught. On his cell phone screen was a series of flirtatious messages between Gerald and some unnamed woman. I could see a revealing photograph, but the face was covered, so I could not quite make out the individual. One thing I knew that was for certain was that the woman on Gerald's phone was indeed not Jane. I knew I had to act quickly if I wanted to get this evidence without getting caught. Who knows what Gerald would be willing to do if he caught me? This was proof that he had multiple sides. Part of me felt vindicated that my and Arnie's suspicion towards Gerald had been correct. But when I thought of Jane, you see, Jane is so in love with Gerald. What do I do with this information? In a bit of desperation, I decided to pull out my cell phone and take a picture of what was on Gerald's phone. I didn't have time to forward the message to myself. Instead of getting an entire conversation, I only had a chunk of a conversation, but this small chunk was all I needed to incriminate Gerald. Suddenly, Gerald came walking by the corner and said, "What are you doing with my cell phone?" I explained that I was simply getting my drink, and then I told Gerald I had not even noticed his cell phone, and I could tell by the distrusting look in his eyes that he believed me about as far as he could throw me. I quickly scurried off because, frankly, Gerald's disappointed and disdainful glare was starting to burn a hole in me. I quickly flagged down my husband. I explained why I had been gone for so long, and I showed Arnie the picture I've taken off Gerald's phone. He said the evidence was clear as day, but how could we tell Jane? I told him that's why I had come to him. We both knew that Jane was hopelessly in love with Gerald, and we both knew that breaking the news of this affair would not be easy. We didn't even have an entire conversation. I mean, we just had a small part of it. And it wasn't even an actual screenshot. I had in my possession a grainy cell phone photograph taken of someone else's cell phone conversation, yet the evidence was still as clear as day. It was indisputably Gerald engaging in unfaithful behavior with a woman who was not Jane. Yet we both knew that Jane could just easily say that we faked the photograph just to, quote, tear her perfect marriage apart. The possibilities for things going wrong were endless, and me and Arnie decided we were going to wait until after the family gathering to give the news to ease the humiliation and pain. What happened immediately afterwards was mind-boggling. Just as me and Arnie were walking back in the main living area, Jane comes storming into the room and announces that she knows Gerald is cheating on her. I initially felt a sense of relief wash over me, for I no longer had the need to tell Jane what was even happening. But that's when she turned and pointed to me. What she said next made my jaw hit the floor, and Jane pointed at me and said that I was Gerald's mistress. What? I was frozen solid, and I could hear the commotion of the crowd growing and growing fierce. That's when I knew I had to reveal the truth, no matter how much it would hurt Jane. So I showed Jane the photo evidence of Gerald's infidelity, complete with the image of the mysterious woman, and Jane began to sob. And things only spiraled from there. Jane revealed to me, and Arnie, that she had actually just pulled my name out of thin air in an act of desperation. She said that she had noticed a lot of suspicious behavior from Gerald over the past couple of months, but had been sweeping all of her fears under the rug. She explained that she was so in love with Gerald and in denial about what was right there in front of her. All this was transpiring in front of their entire family, and I knew it had to be embarrassing and traumatic for Jane. But then, things just kept getting worse for Jane. Her cell phone rang, and she answered when she saw it was Gerald calling. I could not quite hear what Gerald was saying on the other end, but I could see by the look on Jane's face and her reaction afterwards that the news was not good. Jane began sobbing hysterically. After a straight minute of sobbing, I was finally able to ask Jane what happened. She gave us all the news that Gerald had already left the country with some unnamed woman. Well, he said he was taking away everything. The credit cards, the allowances, the luxuries, every little perk he had granted Jane was being swept away in an instant. To sit there and watch as her entire world and lifestyle were taken from her, it was so heartbreaking. So I sit here writing all this for you today for a reason. I need advice. Guys, first, I just feel responsible for all of this that happened, to be honest. Perhaps my meddling with Gerald's cell phone was the, sign for this grand exit and all this drama. I know I should not blame myself for the failing marriage of others, but I feel so bad for Jane. I wanted to help her in some way, and I wanted to get revenge on this clown, Gerald. Me and Arnie have always known that Gerald is a jerk, and we wanted every single person to know about it too. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. Oh man, so it looks like OP is stuck in a pickle in the middle of a failing marriage, and well, it's not her marriage that she's worried about. I do have multiple updates for you guys today. I hope everyone's enjoying their day so far. If you guys want to help support the channel, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button underneath this video right now. Thank you so much for that, guys. Let's jump into update number 1. Hey everyone, I'm back with an update. First, I'd like to thank every one of you who left the kind and supportive comments and thoughtful advice. We all really appreciate it, and with all the drama unfolding, it's nice to have a place where I can finally vent. I wish I could say things are getting better, but they aren't. Gerald's still missing as I type this, and he actually had the nerve to send me and Arnie a letter by mail. There's no return address, of course, so there doesn't appear to be any way to track the letter. If any of you have suggestions for how we could track a letter origin, feel free to let me know. I'm starting to think Gerald might not actually be outside the country, but is instead trying to make us think he is outside the country. And to make matters worse, the letter Gerald sent us is, well, full of threats. He says me and Arnie will be sorry that we kept looking for him, and he says Jane is better off without him. Well, I agree with him on that one, but that does not absolve him from injustice. As for Jane, she's not doing much better either. The grief process will take time, and I think she's consumed by denial, anger, and a host of other strong emotions. Me and Arnie are letting her stay at our house because Gerald callously and coldly changed the locks on their home. Jane can't even get back inside to get a hold of her own belongings. That's the type of immoral jerk we're dealing with when it comes to Gerald. And to be honest with you guys, I just don't know how he was able to pull the wool over Jane's eyes for so darn long. One thing is definitely for sure. It won't be much longer until Gerald gets his comeuppance. You can't go around threatening and harassing people, let alone cheating on them in the process, and expect to just keep getting away with it. Nope, not on my watch. Again, I want to say thank you everybody for the kind words for so far, and if anyone has advice on how you would go about figuring out where Gerald is, feel free, let us know. Updates number 2. Hey everybody, I'm back with yet another update. Gerald's still been sending harassing letters. Hey, it doesn't bother me, each piece is just part of the mountain of evidence I'm building. You see, I took some of your advice, and I got it from the last update. A lot of you were telling me, go ahead and look into hiring a private investigator. I understand they can come in handy across cases like this. There's a local private investigator who's infamous in small towns. He's even made it to television, being featured in a few high-profile local cases. His name is Thompson. Thompson is very cutthroat, ruthless type of investigator who you call when you want to get things done. Me and Arnie called Thompson and explained the details of the case. We showed him the photo I've taken of the messages between Gerald and the mysterious mistress and the revealing photograph. And we showed Thompson all the letters that we've been getting from Gerald. He took one look at the letters and immediately knew that they were not from outside of the country. Thompson explained that while he was not yet able to prove it, he would be able to figure out exactly where the letters were coming from very soon. Me and Arnie knew that Gerald was a coward, so we weren't surprised by this at all, but it still did not quite make much sense. Guys, do any of you have any guesses as to why Gerald would be pretending to be outside of the country? I guess he's scared of the impending divorce, I don't know. I bet court is not going to look pretty for Gerald once we track him down and Jane gets herself a lawyer. Thompson also pointed out one interesting fact. If Gerald were really in another country, there would be no way for the letters to arrive so quickly at my house. Duh. Soon we shall catch him. Jane deserves to see this guy get what he deserves. Updates number 3. Hey people, Rachel here. Back again for yet another update, and things just keep getting juicier and juicier. I wish I could say for your sake, my sake, and Jane's sake that this was all getting wrapped up, but things just keep getting crazier. So if you've been following along so far, you'll know that I and Arnie have hired the local private investigator Thompson to help us track down Gerald. Ever since my last update, Gerald's still leaving letters at our doorstep, even threatening us and telling us to stop looking for him. Thompson was actually able to immediately figure out that the letters were not coming from outside of the country, but he also uncovered some very juicy information on top of that. He called me and Arnie earlier today and told us to stop by his office. We knew it must be important if he wanted us to show up in person instead of just telling us about it on the phone. First, let me give you all some background information. Jane's best friend is Diane. Well, if Diane is Jane's best friend, you might ask, where has she been throughout this whole debacle with Gerald and the mistress? Exactly. This whole time, Jane's been wondering where Diane is. You see, Diane's been telling Jane that she's out of town and will be back soon. That's part of the reason Jane has been staying at our house. Normally, when Jane is in a time of distress or great need, she would be staying at Diane's house. Diane is not around for a reason, apparently. Thompson produced photographs that proved without a shadow of a doubt that not only is Gerald not out of the country, but he's also still in our same small town, and not only is Gerald in our small town with his mistress, but his mistress happens to be no other than Diane. All the evidence was there. Photograph after photograph. I mean, it was a wonder none of us had seen Gerald yet. He was all over town with Diane. Me and Arnie thanked Thompson for his help, and we collected all the evidence, and now things were about to get even more difficult. It was bad enough dealing with the distraught Jane, who just found out her husband was cheating on her, but now she was about to find out she lost both her best friend and her husband. Me and Arnie aren't sure how we're going to break the news to her. That's part of why I'm typing this for you all today. You see, how can I break the news to Jane? I feel awful, and now I'm even more certain than before that only the language Gerald will be able to understand is the language of revenge. Update number 4. Hey everyone, I'm back for yet another update. I took your advice and tried to lay it on Jane easily, but it wasn't as easy to do. I mean, let's face it, there's no nice and pleasant way to find out your husband's cheating on you with your best friend. Me and Arnie called Jane into the living room and told her to sit down. I think she could sense something was going to go very wrong. We gave her the news that her best friend Diane was in fact Gerald's mistress, and Jane sobbed uncontrollably. She didn't want to believe us at first, but we showed her some of the Polaroid photos Thompson had given us. Jane finally accepted the truth. Until then, she had been somewhat holding out hope that this was merely a fling or merely a case of Gerald having a midlife crisis, but once Jane saw the pictures of Gerald and Diane sharing milkshakes and doing other romantic things, she knew once and for all that her marriage was over. Me and Arnie gave her the necessary time to sit and grieve, but then Jane surprised us all. She asked, and I quote, "When are we getting revenge?" Since we had proof that Gerald was in town, I proposed that we hire a lawyer and sue him. The way I see it, all these pictures of the text and the meetings with Diane combined with a sudden ruse to make it seem like he was in a different country tell us Gerald was likely trying to avoid a legitimate divorce in court. I think if we can get Thompson in the courtroom with us and all of us prepare a coherent argument, we can take down Gerald and Diane so easily. I explained all of this to Arnie and Jane, and they actually agreed. Wish me luck, guys. We were talking to each other a moment ago and realized something. Interesting, too. A nice little social media campaign might be a great way to get Gerald's attention. That would definitely be a great way for him to find out about his impending trip to divorce court. Updates number 5. This is the final update. Hello everyone. Sorry it's been some time since my last update. I'm back for one more. I just wanted to wrap things up for you since I've been getting so many comments asking what happened. Me and Arnie arranged for a court summons to get Gerald right where we wanted him. Me and Jane began posting about Gerald and Diane's affair, after all, of the social medias. And funny enough, once his reputation was on the line, he actually started to listen. Now, our entire small town was gossiping and chit-chatting right there about Gerald's affairs. Gerald cares so much about his public image that I know it must have driven him crazy. Gerald and Diane were ordered to attend divorce court, and Thompson acted as part of our defense. He was able to successfully argue that Gerald likely skipped town with the intention of absconding divorce court proceedings. Obviously, Gerald had a vested interest in avoiding court because he knew his assets would be on the line if he attended court proceedings. I showed the photographic evidence of the text between Gerald and the mystery woman, and Thompson was able to prove through his own photographs that the mistress was indeed Diane. Nothing at this point looked good for Gerald or Diane, in fact, and the final nail in the coffin was simply Jane's testimony herself. She recalled all the suspicious moments she ignored, and she spoke of the manipulation she had experienced right there at Gerald's hands. The courtroom could see just how dedicated and devoted Jane had been, and Gerald had thrown it all away. Gerald only dug his grave deeper when he tried telling her room how he should not have to deal with Jane. He said that Jane loved him too much and that he was only trying to, quote, make things easier on her by hiding his infidelity from her and simply pretending to take off to live in some foreign country. Well, I'll tell you right now, this did not win him any favors in the crowd. Even Diane appeared embarrassed and straight up defeated. The room went cold with silence, and the judge prepared to read the verdict. Well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that things went as well as you possibly could have thought. The judge ordered Gerald and Diane to do full-time community service for a while to help raise debts to pay off the pain and suffering that they caused Jane. Gerald's assets were awarded to Jane because of the cruelty of his affair. As for me, well, I'm doing well. Me and Arnie were doing really well, and we're very close to Jane and her new boyfriend. I and Arnie both have good feelings about this one. Thank you for reading and giving me so many kind words. Hey everyone, I was so excited to share my news about getting engaged to the love of my life, but I'm afraid that my excitement is about to be tarnished by my sister-in-law, Maria. Well, I thought my life was going to be amazing because I was blessed with so many sweet and loving in-laws. I mean, it's kind of a rare thing to have such unproblematic people in your family, though I wasn't much used to all such sweetness and positivity. I know it sounds weird, but that's true because the earlier part of life was completely opposite to the life that I'm living right now. My parenting was kinda messed up, with crappy friendships and toxic exes, and I somehow managed to pass high school in this chaotic life, which had become so natural to me that I even stopped bothering about it. Well, it was something that I got used to for quite a while because every other teenager had experienced it once in a lifetime, until I met Martin. Meeting him was one such thing when the cycle of such things stopped. He was my senior and we met through common friends during my graduation years. He and his surroundings were so nurturing and healthy that it took a hell of an effort to get used to it. Most people cannot understand that, and that's completely fine, because it isn't easy to be receptive to good things in life when you've been through so many of those things which were quite draining and unacceptable. But it is wrong for me to assume that everyone and everything is going to be like that. Now, I feel like that might have manifested itself unintentionally when I came across my sister-in-law Maria. I didn't know much about her before because my fiancé Martin had hardly ever mentioned her. If he had, it was casual, as if it was, I was not missing out on anything important when it came to her. And like their entire family, her existence was highly unbothered by them. I was a little shocked that they were so ignorant about her, though I could not bring it out because my questions were brushed off with vague responses. I did not push it much since it was uncomfortable for my in-laws, and I also did not want to spoil the vibe when it was always just so much cheery and party-like fun whenever we got together. When she was about to arrive, the happiness of my in-laws seemed to be superficial. Even a stranger could sense that they were not truly happy about it, but still, asking them would make them awkward, so I thought of seeing it by myself without preconceptions. I was only being warned by Martin not to get too close to her or get involved more than usual. She was only invited to attend our family functions and be the center of celebration, so our friends and other acquaintances would not question us about Maria and her whereabouts. As far as I remember, she had hardly participated in Christmas or Thanksgiving celebrations. Martin feared that things might fall out of place or go wrong, and I waited for the right moment to know the reason behind his anxiety towards his sister, Maria. After all, how long can I ignore her when she's soon to be my sister-in-law? Everything was fine for me when she came back. She was introduced to me, but there was not much information after that about where she had been or what she was doing. Even Martin was booked an apartment for her to stay there and paid in advance if required. She recently graduated from hotel management and is currently finding a job to pay for her daily life expenses. Interacting with her was fun and easy, until I saw the materialistic side of her. She looked concerned about how much I earned and spent money on other branded accessories. Though it was a little bit, weird. At least I was relieved by the fact that instead of pretending to be modest, she was rather very outspoken and honest about it. And her family member clearly hated it, as did Martin, but he did not object. So, I once doubted that maybe she even only liked talking to me because I was a little more affluent than she expected. But I did not let the doubt get over me. While I was enjoying dinner, I offered her papaya salad, but she denied having it. When dinner was over, we poured a glass of wine and champagne, but she denied that too. It was a little surprising since she seemed like a pretty person. So what was stopping her from drinking? She only denied it, saying she did not feel like having alcohol. She rather opted for lime juice. I didn't judge her, thinking that I did not know her enough, so I gave her the benefit of the doubt and started to enjoy myself. When we reached home after dinner this time, I confronted Martin about why everyone tends to avoid her for so many years. She seemed pretty much fine to me, except she was a little upfront about money matters. But that could not be the excuse for avoiding her for so many years. Martin just sighed and he gave up. He then confessed that she had been accused of shoplifting and getting caught, for which our family was embarrassed among our social circle and other friends. They were already having a hard time dealing with the mess that she created, which tarnished their reputation. They were unwilling to forgive her, and on top of that, she had been involved in quite a fight due to her anger issues. So they had no choice but to send her away to the boarding school to stop the constant questioning of the people. He feared that she might not repeat history or just do something to cause us trouble. Martin had hardly any hopes from her that she might have changed in so many years. He refused to believe her, and he and her family were only tolerating her because she was apparently the heart of the family, and they could not ignore her during their get-togethers and special occasions when they had to portray themselves as a picture-perfect family. Update number 1. Oh my gosh, guys, I can't believe it. Just sit tight and listen, it's going to be a very interesting update. I wish I could say it was hot gossip, but could not because it's my family matter and I cannot sound mean by treating it as entertainment. It's serious, but you can entertain yourself and give some fruitful advice on the matter, keeping in mind that your advice might affect someone's feelings and their life decisions. I hope I can expect sensible advice from you, so here it goes. I was invited to my in-laws' anniversary party, and I found everyone at the party making toast and dancing, except for her. Well, I tried to find her everywhere. But she seemed a little sick that day, chewing on lemon and making frequent visits to the loo. I asked if she was okay, and she told me that her stomach was a little upset, which is why. I thought that she had diarrhea, but instead, when she excused herself, I found her puking. That is where I got suspicious of her. Chewing on lemon slices and skipping alcohol indicated one thing. I wanted to ask her, but was afraid of bringing it up. I thought of discussing this with Martin, but maybe she won't like it. So I tried to butt in a different way. I asked her if she was having any sort of infection. She denied it. Then I told her that I would call a doctor, and she instantly got worried. Well, I only questioned if she wanted me to tell her something that she could share, but she refused it, saying that she wanted some rest. So I called Martin to drop her off at home. I thought of giving her some time and asking her later, so I called the next day to see how her health was going, but she did not tell me anything either, so I decided to go meet her and visit her place with Martin. Though he was quite reluctant, I dragged him along. I reached her place unannounced and, well, as we taught her, someone else came out, and I was shocked to find Jim on the doorstep of my sister-in-law. Even he seemed surprised, and I had a little chat with him. He said that he was just her friend to meet him, and, well, we got a hint that Maria might be involved with him. It was not something that anyone would want because he was my ex-boyfriend during high school, and I knew he was most of the time involved in something illegal or drug-related, so knowing the truth became more important for her and, his family's safety. When we met her, Martin, who wasn't interested in our conversation, it was easy to move away and ask her if she was pregnant. Her face gave off a look of everything. Even though she tried hiding it, I tried to console her by asking who the baby's father was. She didn't want to say that, and I asked if he had planned on marrying her or getting settled into the future. She could not answer that as well, saying that she was looking forward to discussing her pregnancy with the guy. I tried making her understand that she should not take that lightly because there would be multiple responsibilities and it would not be easy to bring up a child as a single mother. If something is bothersome, she could share. Along with that, I told her that in a few weeks her baby bump would be visible, and even I could not help her hide this fact from her family. So the sooner she decides to disclose this, the better it is for everybody involved, and she took it as a threat or an ultimatum, but I clarified that it was just a warning for her as well as her well-wisher. I then asked her if the father was the guy who just left, and her blank expression and silence said it all. But before she could decide how to disclose this, all of a sudden, I spotted Martin, who was already standing there, and we both feared that he might have listened to us, but instead he told us that he was ordering pizza online and what toppings would we like to pick. I sensed through his tone that he had listened to our conversation, though, but he chose not to act on it right away. So when the doorbell rang, I rushed to the kitchen to fetch plates, and along with me, I dragged him away from Maria to ask for help in order to confirm my doubt. And I asked if he knew what his sister had just confessed. Well, I admit I was wrong because maybe my timing of asking him was too bad, because Maria, who had come to ask us for a change, now knows the truth that he knew everything. Oh, things went bitter with her, but the unexpected part was that I blamed for it was me. Maria believed I had already told Martin about her pregnancy, and that was the reason I brought him along with me, even though Martin tried to tell her that I had not told him anything. She said that he was siding with me because I was soon to be his wife. And now I'll tell everyone that she's pregnant without being married. She called me names and everything for betraying her just because she misunderstood everything. Meanwhile, Martin, enraged by Maria's disrespectful behavior towards me, that had worsened the atmosphere, started throwing things at her. And she had also started accusing him and kept pushing him away from her home. She banged the door on our faces as soon as we stepped out of her house, and Martin threw the plant that hit her door and left with me. Because things had gone out of hand, Martin could not hold back and told everyone about Maria's pregnancy. I had to tell them that he was my ex who was into illegal deeds and had been arrested quite often because of that. Knowing that she was pregnant with a guy who had a criminal record, her parents reached her place, and this time she could not ignore them, standing at the place that she lives, and so she let them in. They all told her to go get herself, get rid of the baby, or else they would call the cops on her. Maria tried to blame me for trying to defame her and the family, but my in-laws did not pay attention to her, as they simply knew that she was in the habit of running into trouble. Maria had no choice but to give in to the last just to save herself from getting arrested. Though it was for her own good, how should I convince her to try to make things better between us than she had in mind? Guys, please suggest me. Top comments from the original post. OP, you did more than you were supposed to. You were quite worried about her, and you did because you listened to your instincts. You cannot choose how people react to your actions, but as long as your intentions are good, the results will always be the same as well. Don't worry, OP. You should give all her love and affection. Maybe she would realize someday that she was on the wrong path, and she'll soon get what you deserve. The love and respect from your sister-in-law. Comment number 2. Oh, come on, OP. How could you expect people to change so quickly? And even if she doesn't, at least you should change yourself and stop giving a darn about her. Let her be, and you better mind your own business. You cannot force people, what they should do or not. Her parents were already dealing with her, so you should just stay out of trouble and continue with what you've been doing for years. But now, if the damage is done, you could apologize and just stay away. Update number 2. Hey guys, I wanted to make things better with Maria, and luckily it got there. Even though I could not believe it, but it did. And I cannot wait to share this amazing experience with you. Maria has gone through with getting rid of the baby, and I went to meet her. But I could not because she started making a scene in front of everyone. Doctors and other medical staff who have observed her behavior suggest that we get some sort of therapy that would help her heal mentally and emotionally. Most women suffer from hormonal imbalances and side effects from pregnancy and other medications, especially in the case of getting rid of the baby. Along with that, it will also help her to move on in her life and her past relationships. And gladly, it worked a lot. It took a few weeks, but the improvement was quite visible. This time, my entire family tried to make things better with Maria. They took a promise from Maria that she would not contact him again and that they would keep her pregnancy secret from their social circle and other acquaintances. Due to the changed witness in her behavior, everybody, including me, believed that Maria had moved on in her life and would not contact her ex again. Well, I somehow tried to convince Martin to do the same, and he tried to talk to her. Surprisingly, things became better with Maria, even though not in my case, because she only stopped misbehaving with me and calling me out in public. Well, she only resorted to silence, and Martin did not like it, so he told her to apologize to me. Well, this was another surprise that I was not prepared for. She did that as well, and I was so excited that the dates of the wedding were coming near, and everybody was occupied by that, but one thing that did not skip my mind, and maybe others did to some extent, was Maria's birthday, which was about to happen the very next day. And it's been 2 days since she got discharged from the hospital. You see, it would be better to welcome Maria into our family, so I bought her a present and planned with everyone to be preparing a little surprise party for her. My in-laws were glad to have their normal daughter Maria back after so long that they could not wait to welcome her. And they thanked me for being there for their own daughter when they were out, and I bought a special present for Maria to cheer up her mood. It was a beautiful emerald pendant necklace, which was a little vintage due to its decade-old design, but it seemed quite unique and tasteful. I could perfectly picture Maria wearing that. It seemed like it was made for her. Also, she was fond of materialistic stuff and everything. This would definitely make her happy. At times, I saw her smiling while texting on the phone and just instantly put down my presents. It was a strange move, as if she were planning something, and I could not dare ask questions to her again because I wanted to avoid any trouble. She blew out her candles, made a wish, and cut the cake, and when she unwrapped the gift that was given to her by me, she was just baffled, though I had mistaken it for being awestruck like everybody else. They could not wait to see what was in it, and their faces were so blank and the silence seemed so loud it gave me anxiety. I sensed something went wrong, but she kept it aside and said that she needed to use the restroom. I asked what happened because their reactions were similar. They confessed that the emerald pendant necklace was a gift that reminded her of her past, as it had an uncanny resemblance to that necklace for which she caught shoplifting on the CCTV camera. That video went so viral that it became news, which also got circulated in a local newspaper as well. Her arrest became the talk of the town, which had been exaggerated, and she was bullied in school as well. Well, she ended up getting herself into a fight with them. As a result, her bully was hospitalized and she got rusticated. The damage was done to the extent that they had to send her away to boarding school just to avoid embarrassment, questionable looks, teasing, you name it. It took a serious toll on her mental health, and they were not in a position to forgive her for her deeds. And that's why they gladly sent her away, because of their respectable social image, which she had tarnished. My mother-in-law said that Maria must have gotten triggered, and now she's afraid that she might react adversely to this because she has a vindictive side to her that they're mostly scared of. But, to my surprise, she returned happily and thanked me for the gift, though she gave me a backhanded compliment over the coincidence of having an unusual talent of making her rethink every time. either by her pregnancy or by reminding her of her past. Well, she also felt the need to return the favor with something special. My in-laws were so happily surprised by such a mild reaction that they did not expect it, and they thought that things might have changed throughout the years. So they resumed their celebration. Update number 3. Hey guys, I cannot tell you how things have gone down the road, but there was no turning back for me. So now I've given up as well. I feel bad for my in-laws, and they have such a toxic daughter like Maria, and now I realize why they lost contact with her when they sent her away to another state. She does not deserve their love, and neither does mine. Well, I revealed her true side and made her aware of the consequences of her actions, so here is how it began. I thought that Maria thing was over by then because it had taken a hell of a lot of my time, and I'd forgotten to focus on my wedding. So from now on, I was completely occupied with my wedding preparations and other arrangements, and in the midst of the business, all of a sudden I found Maria at my door. She greeted me happily and told me to shut my eyes for a while, and she led me somewhere, probably into my backyard, and she handed me something and said, "Surprise!" Well, when I opened up my eyes, there was a really cool car standing in my backyard, and there were keys that she placed in my hand. I was excited to have them, and I could not thank her enough for such a beautiful surprise, though I was a little concerned, to be honest with you. I mean, about how she managed to pull off the amount needed to give me such a gift. She said that the car was second-hand, but it was in pretty good condition, so she got a good deal. The gift was for everything that I've done for her, like helping her get rid of the baby, breaking up her relationship with the bad guy, and giving her such a special necklace, and making efforts to mend the ties with her own family. She could not think of anything less than this. Also, it was wedding time, so it was also included as a wedding gift. I was touched by such a warm gesture and told her that she was a part of the family and should have all the love and affection as compensation for all those years when she stayed away from them. I offered to give her a ride wherever she wanted, and she told me that she would soon get what she wanted, and I didn't have to be worried about it. I didn't get what she meant by that, though. But then I went ahead to take a look at the car. The headlights at the back looked a little cracked, as if they were bumped into something. She apologized and said, she's not a good driver, which is why she hit it lightly while parking it, so hey, I let it go. It was getting late, and I had an appointment with my tailor and had to move and just take a look at the florist shop to finalize my flower decor. So I thought of taking a test drive while I ran my errands. I was on my way, and all of a sudden my car was making these weird noises. So I thought of going to repair it soon because I would be stuck halfway on the road. When I asked for repairs from the guy, he asked me for my VIN number as his record. I didn't know that because it was not visible properly as it was covered in mud, it looked like. I thought of asking Maria, but her call did not pick up. So I thought of searching my dashboard or other things to find it, but I couldn't. The guy started becoming suspicious of me, saying that he did not have a whole day for me and I could have just moved on and get away because a queue was waiting behind me. Embarrassed, I dialed Martin's number, calling him to pick me up, and when he arrived, I told him everything about the cars. When he got to know that it was given to me by Maria, he smelled trouble and tipped the mechanic to run a local check over the car and tell us anything he found suspicious. And it did exactly what Martin suspected. The mechanic ran a local check and said that the car was doubtful because it's probably stolen. Seeing all the signs like tampered VIN, damaged headlights, second-hand stuff, etc., we should contact the police before anything goes wrong. And all of a sudden it hit me. Maria said that she would soon get what she wanted, and now I know that it was all planned and not mistaken at all. Martin thanked him and went to call the police, but furious at Maria's deeds, I stopped Martin and said that I have a better plan this time. Well, we finally managed to drive the car to my place inside the garage and wait for the night. And when it was getting dark, we both drove to her place. When I found them, her apartment lights were on and she was still inside. I drove closer to her building and my sister-in-law, who gifted me a stolen car, to get me arrested before our wedding day. But little did she know I'm aware of her plans. We parked the car right outside her house and I called the police and told them about the suspicious lady driving the car recklessly like she was on some sort of drugs. Martin had no idea what I had in mind. He came out thinking that we would go and talk to Maria, but I stopped him, and we sat inside to hide in his car. I explained how the dots got connected while I was returning to Maria's vehicle. I told him how most of the time I see Maria on a phone call. She hides it from me, and how she talks about getting what she wants. Martin also grew angry, but the look of satisfaction was evident on his face when he saw the cops arrive and arrest Maria. Later on, when her phone call history was checked, she was still involved with her boyfriend, who made her pregnant, and it was found that he had been wanted for a few months by the police. I thought he smuggled drugs, but he had recently switched his profession to car stealing, and it became pretty obvious that the text messages and phone calls that she used to hide from me were with him. And well, he was the one who helped her seek revenge on me. I believe his previous charges and felonies will make things difficult for the both of them. Hey everyone, I'm fairly new to this group, but I wanted to share my story and get some advice if I can. I'm 28 and female, recently welcomed 2 beautiful baby girls into my life through surrogacy. My husband and I have been married for the past 3 years and have always agreed from the beginning of the relationship that we wanted to have kids as soon as we could. We started trying to get pregnant right after we got married, but unfortunately, after 1.5 years of trying, we were told that we were medically unable to have a baby. My womb is apparently not the right shape to be able to nurture a fetus for the duration of a pregnancy, which was news that broke my heart. Because my husband's perfectly healthy, we decided to look into surrogacy as we would now be able to use DNA from the both of us. It was very important to us that our baby be biologically ours. And saying this, we would have been perfectly happy adopting a child as the most important thing for us being parents. We did want to have that deep connection if possible, so as I said, surrogacy was the next best option. Some background before we get into it though. My brother and I are fraternal twins, and so have always been attached at the hip ever since we were kids. We have always gave our honest opinion about the partners that we brought home and always valued each other's perspectives. When he brought home his now wife, I'll be honest, I did not expect it to last as long as it has, but I never really disliked her. They've been married for 4 years now, and she and I have been able to grow closer since she's been a part of the family. She and my brother had a child shortly into their marriage, and so my husband and I were very open with them about their pregnancy journey. When my husband and I decided to think about surrogacy, my sister-in-law immediately volunteered herself, explaining that she would be happy to involve in us finally having a baby, and loved the idea of our child and their child being connected in this way. My husband and I were weary at first, as we've been told by some professionals that involving family in situations like this can be very complicated, but at the end of the day, money was a big factor. As it always is. If we were to go through the agency and find somebody to carry our baby, it's going to cost upwards of $100,000, and we just didn't have that kind of money to spend despite saving for the past few years. My sister-in-law offered to go through the whole process for only $3,000, and asked that we just cover her medical expenses for the duration of the period. After taking time to think it over and discuss it between us, my husband and I agreed to let her be our surrogate. To be honest, as well as the financial aspect, we did love the idea of our baby being carried by somebody who's part of the family. Everything was going perfectly fine at the beginning. We brought my sister-in-law to the clinic to have the insemination done, took her home afterwards, and basically just stood by her until the pregnancy was confirmed. Things continued to go smoothly up until the first ultrasound date when all 4 of us were given some surprising news. As we were all family, my brother was very involved in the process as well. He loved the idea of our kids being so connected by one womb. So, he made sure to be present for as much of the pregnancy as he could. As I said, we were surprised at the appointment to find out that my sister-in-law was carrying not 1, but 2 babies, twins. Well, twins did not run in my family, as my brother and I are evidence of, but we never expected it to happen to us. We were all taken aback by the news, but took it in stride, as we did not see it as the biggest deal in the world. My sister-in-law, on the other hand, got very worked up when she heard the news. She began to panic, and it took quite a while to calm her down again. She told us that she'd prepare herself to carry one baby, as she had done it before, but was freaking out at the idea of having 2 babies, as well as the fact that she would be giving them to us after their birth. She was able to eventually get used to the idea as time went on, but as she went into the 3rd trimester, she began to have some health problems, including developing pregnancy diabetes. She quickly became high risk, and the babies had to be born a few weeks early, for their safety as well as my sister-in-law's. As a result, both she and the babies had to stay in the neonatal intensive care unit for the past 4 weeks, just to ensure that all 3 of them were in no medical danger. My husband and I were told last week that we were able to take the babies home, so we've had them here for the past few days. I won't lie, it's been difficult so far, as my sister-in-law's come to stay with us as well, to breastfeed them and continue their skin-to-skin contact. To be honest with you, I'm feeling jealous of her, as I have not been able to have any quality time with my babies in the months since they were born. My sister-in-law has spent every single second with them, for their own well-being of course, but she's been able to develop the maternal bond that I haven't. I tried to prepare myself for this as much as I could, as I was aware before agreeing to surrogacy that it would be a bit more difficult to bond with my baby initially, due to not carrying them myself. But the complications of the pregnancy and the resulting 4 weeks of quality time my sister-in-law had with them in the NICU have left me a bit unsure of how my role is within the dynamic. So this is my dilemma right now. I don't want to have anything to do or make my sister-in-law feel uncomfortable or unwelcome, but at the same time, she has been able to develop a maternal relationship with my babies that I have not had the chance to do yet, and I'm just worried that if it goes on too much longer, they won't truly see me as their mother, even though I am. I'm sure some of you are screaming at me that this is one of the complications of having a family member be your surrogate, and yeah, I understand now. But there's the moment I just want to do what's best for all of us. So, in saying that, if anyone has any words of advice they could share with me on how to navigate this situation as smoothly as possible, I would really appreciate it. Thanks for reading. What's up everybody, Mr. Reddito here. I hope you're having a fantastic day. So, we do have quite a few updates to hop into, and if you think it's a wild ride so far, you've seen nothing yet. If you want more daily videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and here is update number 1. Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. It's been a bit over a month since I wrote my post about my surrogacy journey, and before I get into the update, I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who reached out and their words of support and advice. It really means a lot to me to know that there are people out there sending me good energy throughout this process, and that I'm not alone in the struggle of bonding with my babies. In saying that, I did get some rude messages telling me that I should have expected things to be complicated since my husband and I chose to have a family member be our surrogate. As I said in the original post, I'm well aware of this, and the financial aspect was the biggest influencer in our decision. We can all look back and say we would have done things differently if we knew then what we know now, but having those regrets does nothing to change the situation that we're in now. At the end of the day, we made our choice, we're in this position now, and sending condescending messages does not really change anything. So, my babies have been home for about 6 weeks now, and things have been able to settle down somewhat. My sister-in-law stayed with us for about 2 weeks in order to make sure the girls were doing okay, but she and my brother decided to give us some space to bond with our daughters. The few weeks since then have been so great, and I've been able to build my relationship with my girls and develop the maternal bond I've been looking for. Despite the worry I had when writing my initial post, the past few weeks have been full of quality time with the girls, for both me and my husband. Even though my sister-in-law moved out of our home and back in with her husband and their son, she's been checking in quite a bit with us and comes over to see the babies every 2 or 3 days. It's beginning to feel like a bit of suffocation, if I'm honest. Yes, I've been able to bond with them as their mother, but I do believe that my sister-in-law feels an entitlement to them since she carried them for 9 months. We all signed a surrogacy agreement before beginning the process, detailing that upon the child, or children in this case, birth, my sister-in-law handed over all legal rights to us as the legitimate parents. So, in this case, we did everything according to the law. And so my husband and I are the legal parents, which would be useful if things got more serious than they are. I don't think my sister-in-law particularly cares about the legality of the situation, though, as I think she feels that she would be able to spend as much time with the girls as she wants. As of now, my husband and I will continue to let my sister-in-law come see our daughters, as we do totally understand that she developed a love for them over the 9 months that they were inside of her. We don't want to take that bond away from her, but we are aware that it could get messy as things progress further. Things are fine in the meantime, as the girls are still newborns and my sister-in-law is no doubt going through some postpartum emotions, but we will be maintaining our boundaries as time goes on. I don't have much more to add here, just that I'm absolutely in love with my girls. They're the most beautiful babies I've ever seen in the world, and I would have already done anything for them. If everything else falls apart, at least this experience has brought them to me, so I will never regret it. I'll leave this here for now. If anybody wants to reach out with some advice on how to manage the relationship between my sister-in-law and the babies, I would really appreciate it. But as I said above, condescending messages about how I should not have had a family member carry our daughters, it's not very helpful and are not appreciated. The decision was made and here we are. That's what matters. Thank you again for reading this. I will be back soon. Update number 2. Hey all, long time no update, I know, but things have been pretty chaotic around here for the past few weeks, so let me explain. A few weeks after my last post, my husband and I decided to talk to my brother and my sister-in-law about her relationship with our girls. It was getting to the point where she would just arrive at our home at all hours of the day without even giving us any notice, just to spend time with the babies. We had to be gracious to her about the situation, as we do understand that she loves them. But we had all talked things through before we agreed to her being our surrogate. We had discussed the fact that despite the expectation that she would grow to care about the babies, because how can you not when you're carrying them inside you for 9 months? She must acknowledge that we are the parent, not her. Again, I do know that us having a close family member as a surrogate was maybe not the best choice, but we did have a lengthy conversation about boundaries with her for this very reason. I know it's naive to think that things would go strictly to plan when emotions get involved, but the bottom line is, my sister-in-law is disrespecting us as the baby's parents and seems to believe that she's more suitable than we are to take care of them. So, after some conversations between my husband and me about how to navigate the discussion with my sister-in-law, we decided to sit down with her about 2 weeks ago and talk things through. It did not go that well, to tell you the truth. She got super upset quite quickly, telling us that she'd grown to really love the girls throughout the pregnancy, especially during the weeks that she spent with them in the hospital. We tried to explain to her that we did not want to stop her from seeing the babies, but that she had to respect the fact that we are the parent, not her. It was a pretty emotional-fueled conversation with a lot of tears shed and raised voices. My sister-in-law got a bit nasty at the end, choosing to remind me that I'm not my daughter's biological mother and that she had a better bond with them than I ever would. My husband and brother then had to get her to leave, as I got really upset by this. We reminded her before she left that we had discussed her relationship with the babies, before she even got pregnant, and that she had even signed a legal document on the matter. As I said, this took place about 2 weeks ago. We had no contact with my sister-in-law up until 2 days ago, and she asked to come over to visit the girls. We said yes, glad that she seemed to be less upset and that she respected our boundaries and asked to come over instead of just showing up. She was much less rude this time, respecting when I brought up the feeding and sleeping schedule I developed for them, and before the conversation she just waved me off when I told her I needed to feed them or change them, saying she knew they were fine, so it's great to see that she had taken what she said on board. So, that's where we are now. Things got worse and then a little better. We're still trying to navigate this situation as best as we can, and there's bound to be some trial and error. I'm just glad that my sister-in-law has taken what my husband and I said to her under consideration and respects her place in my daughter's lives. I'll leave this here and let you all know how things go moving forward when I can. Thank you again, as always, for reading and for all of the support. Update number 3. I know. It's been quite some time since I last updated you on how parenthood has been for us, especially with our surrogate drama, but we've actually had some other family issues over the past few months. My husband's father got sick a few months back with lung cancer, and unfortunately, he passed 3 weeks ago. Things have been pretty chaotic since then, as my father-in-law had previously been very healthy, and the illness came on quite suddenly. Obviously, he must have been suffering from cancer for some time, but for some reasons he had no symptoms until the very late in the sickness. He collapsed and was rushed to the hospital, and within 3 days he was gone. My husband's absolutely distraught, understandably, so I've just been trying to be there for him as much as I can. We've had to do quite a bit of organizing in the week since he passed, as it was all very sudden, and my mother-in-law's been a mess since losing her husband. My husband's family lives a few hours away, so we both had to spend quite a bit of time away from home. We did not want to disrupt our baby's routines by taking them into an unknown environment while still so young, so we asked my brother and sister-in-law to take care of them while we were gone. Some of you might disagree with us doing this due to the recent issues that we had with boundaries and my sister-in-law, but we reasoned that we needed somebody who genuinely loves the girls to take care of them. We knew that she would make absolutely sure that they were healthy and happy for as long as we were gone. We got back a few days ago after helping out my husband's family as much as we could. We went straight to my brother's house to pick up our girls, and we were so happy to see them, especially my husband. After going through a very emotional week, we just wanted to hug our babies and take them home so we could adjust to the stress and grief of the past few weeks. My sister-in-law had definitely gotten more attached to the girls over 2 weeks than she was looking after them. She was very reluctant to hand them back over to us, offering to take care of them for longer if we needed, even offering for as long as we ever wanted, because she knows that we need more time to grieve. I do believe that she cares about my husband's loss. She's not a horrible person after all, but I do think that she wanted to spend more time with the girls. I'm sure this could become a bigger issue as time goes on, especially given the fact that we'd had to talk to her about boundaries already. But to be honest with you, we did the best we could with the situation we were in. We never in a million years expected such a sudden loss, especially of such a young and healthy man, and so made the decision we made in a fluster of panic and anxiety. The bottom line is that we gave the girls to someone who we trusted to look after them while we were gone, and my sister-in-law did just that. We'll just have to deal with the consequences if there are any later. That's all I have for now. I want to say a huge thank you for everyone who has reached out, though I do apologize for the lack of responses in the past few weeks. I'll do better in the future to reach back out to everybody, as the support of many have shown me over the past few months has been an absolute blessing. Don't worry, I'll be back very soon, but in the meantime, please look after yourself and hug your loved ones. Update number 4. Hey guys, it's been 2 months since my husband arrived home after arranging his father's funeral. As you'll remember, his death was quite sudden, and my husband's still grieving quite heavily, which is to be expected. I was not going to write another update here, as our family's loss is neither relevant to this thread nor anyone's business, to be honest. But a recent development has me needing to vent somewhere. My father-in-law left a last will and testament, and in it, left my husband quite a bit of money. It's enough money to give us quite a comfortable life for the next 2 years or so. My father-in-law used to be the CFO of a quite successful company before retiring a few years ago, and has spent the majority of his professional life saving in order to make life easier for his children and grandchildren. As my husband is the eldest child and also the only one of his siblings to have children so far, he received the lion's share of the inheritance. Due to the legal process being as annoying and complicated as it is, we won't actually be able to touch the money for a few months, but this is not a problem for us. We'd never expected to be receiving as much money as we were in the first place. We mentioned the inheritance in passing to my brother and sister-in-law last week, and things escalated from there. My sister-in-law pulled me aside just before we left to go home, asking me what I thought about the idea of giving her some of the money we were going to receive. Well, I was shocked at this, to be honest, as the question came totally out of the blue. Things had been a bit tense between us coming back from staying with my husband's family. You'll already remember that my sister-in-law became a bit too attached to our twin daughters due to being our surrogate. Since we returned, she sort of slipped into an old pattern, insisting that she knew what was better for the girls because of their physical connection, and coming over to see them more often than we agreed to. Despite this, my husband and I have been grieving and so actually sort of appreciated the extra help. It seemed that my sister-in-law had slotted herself into our family dynamic and so felt entitled to some of my husband's inheritance. She reasoned with me that she had already asked for less money from us than the surrogacy than we would be asked from anybody else, and so felt this was sort of a bonus. This was absolutely ridiculous to me, and I said that to her. By this point, it had almost been 2 years since we had all signed the surrogacy agreement, and so I had not even thought about financial aspect of it in a very long time. I told her that we absolutely would not be giving her any inheritance at all, as we had already gone through the specifics of the surrogacy, and she herself had named the amount of money she wanted us to pay her. I also reminded her that my husband and I had paid for all her medical costs during the pregnancy, and hers had been very high-risky, so she had needed quite a bit of medical care. I again told her that there's no chance of this happening, that she was being unfair in asking this from us, and to please not bring it up to my husband as he's still quite fragile. My sister-in-law was quite irritated at our conversation. I think she genuinely believed that she deserved some of the money due to carrying our babies, which again, I know is a big reason to not have a family member be your surrogate. I have not spoken to her since that we had the conversation, though I've spoken to my brother about it and he was shocked that she would even ask such a thing. My brother and I are twins, and so are close as you can imagine, so his wife's behavior towards me has been quite upsetting for him, which I do feel bad about. I'm just left feeling quite upset about how everything's gone down for the past year or so, as things have become so complicated within our family due to my husband and me choosing my sister-in-law as our surrogate. It's revealed a side to her that I'm weary of, especially because she seems to feel so entitled to our daughters, and now our money. I really do feel for my brother too, as I feel that I've messed up his relationship with his wife. That's all for now, guys. I'm trying to put the situation out of my mind for the time being, especially as I chose not to tell my husband about the conversation with my sister-in-law. He's still reeling from losing his father so suddenly, and he doesn't need this on his plate as well. I'll just say before I go that the messages I received after my last update meant the absolute world to my husband and me. The people in this group are some of the kindest I've ever met in my life, in real life as well as on the internet. Your words of kindness and encouragement have been such a source of positivity for us all, and I always appreciate you for that. Thanks for reading. Speak soon. Update number 5. Nearly a year later. So, things got a bit crazy before they got better, I'm afraid. My sister-in-law reached out to my husband and me shortly after asking for part of my husband's inheritance from his late father. She again asked for a portion of the money, but added that if we did not give her the money she believed that she deserved, then she wants to take 1 or 2 of the twin daughters. That's right. As she felt she earned the right to be their mother after carrying them for 9 months. When I tell you that we were shocked into silence for about 10 minutes after hearing this, I promise I'm not exaggerating. She left this as a message on our machine, saying that if she did not get either the money or the baby, she would be taking legal action against us. We of course knew this wasn't even possible, as she signed an official document when agreeing to the surrogacy. She had also provided us with a new recording of her attempt to blackmail us. I'm honestly not sure what she expected to achieve with that message. As you can guess, she and my brother are no longer together. After we told him about the message she sent and played the recording for him, he confronted her and left with their son. He took her to court to get full custody of him on the basis that she's not currently mentally stable, and the case was definitely ruled into his favor, which no one's surprised about. She sees her son every 2 weeks on supervised visits, but other than that, she's no longer part of the family. We did end up having to take a restraining order against her, as she kept coming to our home insisting on seeing our daughters, and so we haven't heard from her in about 4 months. I do still feel really guilty about how things went with her, as part of me feels that she may not have had the mental episode if she had not agreed to be our surrogate. At this point, my family and I are just trying to heal from the situation, as it's really taken a toll on us combined with losing my husband's father so suddenly. I've been making an effort to speak to my brother as much as I can. As I said, I do feel very guilty about the entire situation. I feel responsible for his marriage breakdown despite him constantly telling me otherwise. I just hope that we're both able to heal together from this whole thing, as it's been quite traumatizing. And saying this, the 2 things that this ordeal has given me, or my 2 beautiful daughters. I'll never regret this journey, as it's brought me 2 angels to me and my husband. And that's the absolute most important thing to me. Well, I'm going to end this here, as I don't have much more to say, and would like to just move forward with the situation with my family. I want to say a huge thank you for the last time to each and every one of you for being there for me throughout this journey. As I've said before, the support I've received from the people in this group have reminded me of the kindness of people, and that means the world to me. Thank you guys so much for everything. I've never been this shocked or at a loss for words in my entire life. I'm angry, I'm humiliated, and I'm feeling wronged. I know that something is not right, but I can't even think straight. I'm consumed by anxiety and the insults rained upon me by my own family. I have no one to turn to, no one who could possibly believe me. At first I wrote this in my diary, but I got no answers there. I got no encouragement or comfort, just my own words thrown back at me. After thinking about it and realizing that I had nothing left to lose anymore, I decided to post on here. So I'm Ella, 31, and I used to have the perfect family. Married to my husband Greg with a 3-year-old daughter and a successful career. My life is pretty uneventful. My husband and I both come from good families, and he has a reputable business, and his parents always praise us for the well-balanced life that we lead, which is different from his siblings Ethan and Mallory. See, Ethan is Greg's fraternal twin, but a less ambitious version of my husband. Ironically, he's married to a very ambitious woman, my sister-in-law Rose, and they have a 2-year-old daughter. Rose loves luxury and is always trying to compete with me. Little does she know that we're all well aware of how they lived beyond their means. Due to this, there's a one-sided rivalry between us. Lastly, there's Mallory, the wild child who does not care about family or marriage. Mallory is wild, cares about the environment, and has a lot more partners than one can even count. She doesn't believe in having kids or marriage, which gave my mother-in-law a headache. At every single family gathering, mother-in-law brings it up to Mallory and uses us as a good example, but of course Mallory does not care. There are other cousins as well, but they're not really relevant to what happened a couple of days ago. We have weekly Sunday dinners at Greg's grandparents' house every single Sunday without fail. Last Sunday was no different. All 20 plus of us were present. The only people who could not make it were out of state. Before dessert, while everyone was having conversations, mother-in-law interrupted us before she had an important announcement to make. She reminded us how some days ago she asked for DNA samples of all the grandchildren that we have given. I remembered that she requests something so strange, DNA test? But the family has a tendency to do some weird things, so as long as my daughter was not harmed, then it's fine with me. Days later, mother-in-law announced that she's requesting those samples from her grandkids because Grandpa needs to finalize his will since he is now on his deathbed. I was not surprised because Grandfather is very old now. He rarely came out of his room because he was always unwell, and I knew this was coming one day. But to request that his grandkids be verified was a bit extreme. Having said that, mother-in-law said that she had the results and began to read out the kids and their paternity. One by one, she confirmed that they were part of the family. It was all incredibly boring, and I ended up going on my phone. I got so distracted that when everyone stopped talking and looked at me, my husband nudged me. Immediately, I apologized for being on my phone, but my mother-in-law frowned and asked if that was the only thing that I was sorry about. I asked her to clarify, and she asked me why the test results proved that my daughter was not my husband's. It took me a while to register her words, and when they did, I instinctively laughed because she had to be joking. She tells me to stop laughing and explain my infidelity. Well, obviously, I forced a smile and asked her to be a bit more respectful because I did not appreciate being accused of something so ridiculous. Out of the blue, Rose shoves a paper in my face and boastfully told me to look at it. So slowly, I read through it, but it did not make any sense to me. I was married to Greg and loyal to him. Only. There was no way that this piece of paper was saying that he was not the father of our baby. I slammed the paper on the table and angry told them that the prank was not funny. Greg spoke for the first time and softly said that it was not a prank. I looked into his eyes, hoping that he would believe me over the crazy people, but they were so closed off I tried to touch him, but he stood up and walked away. I tried to get up to follow him, but Rose grabbed my hand and yanked me back onto my seat. She told me to explain myself because they were all waiting for an explanation as to why I had cheated. I tried to explain to them that it was a mistake, but they would not have it. They hauled insults at me no woman should ever have to bear, and I took them. I ended up crying, but they didn't stop. They wanted to shake me for answers, but I had no one because this was all news to me. Unfortunately, my tears did not help, and they accused me of crying crocodile tears. So there I sat as my good character was spit on. I could not move, and eventually my mother-in-law told me to leave her parents' house. I tried to call Greg, but his phone went straight to voicemail, and to top it all off, he had taken the car with him. As I sat there trying to order a ride, Rose came up to me, and she said that, it was sad how the mighty had fallen. She made fun of me for always acting holier than thou when I was a filthy woman. I told her to leave me the hell alone, but she warned me to be nice to her because she was considering giving me a ride. After her words, I looked at her and told her I would rather walk. With that, I walked away from the house. It was about 30 minutes when I finally got to the bus stop, and by then my tears ran dry. When I got home, he packed his bags and left without even leaving a note. So I called him up, but the calls did not go through. So I fetched our daughter from my friend's house, and I didn't tell her everything that happened, just what we had, which was a big argument, and my marriage could be over. She was so kind to me and cooked me some food while I cried. I went home the next day, and when I got there, his mom had come to fetch his work documents. She told me that he did not want to be in the same room as me and to expect divorce papers soon. A day later, he invited me for a coffee so that we could discuss our marriage. He asked me who the other man was, but I could not produce a name for him out of thin air. He told me that if I told him who it was, he would consider forgiving me. My only answer was that there was an error with the test result. To that, he tells me that his parents used the best lab in town, so how could they have made a mistake? Well, I didn't have an answer for that. In fact, I found myself going into shock and being unable to answer at all. Even when he told me that he was going to leave, but we were not done talking, I could not find a way to speak. I was truly and utterly in shock, and I've not seen him since, but I've been thinking about what to do next. The next step would be to get another test, obviously, but where will I get his DNA? I've read stories about it happening on here. Why would it be so far-fetched? I mean, come on, guys. Think about it. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that there was an error at the lab. The other possible explanation is too dark for me to accept it. What if our daughter is not mine as well? Which is why we share no DNA with my husband. I mean, it's possible. Like I said, I've read some pretty crazy stories. Why would it be so far-fetched? I mean, guys, come on. Think about it. I'm not really sure what to do next. Do I demand another DNA test, even if it starts to anger him? He seems pretty convinced that I'm a liar, and I'm lying to him, and, well, I don't blame him too much because he's a logical man who doesn't let emotions drive his choices, and I am absolutely torn. Please help. Update number 1. Hey guys, it's me again. A month after my entire life fell apart, how am I doing? Much better than I thought I would be. Some days are harder than others, but I'm going through it. I'm sure you've been wondering what I ended up doing, right? Well, let me tell you. I've done nothing so far, and there's a reason to that. I think that it's too soon for me to just go out and do anything about it, really. Because every time I mention what happened, Greg shuts down. It is his natural response to trauma, and the best thing to do is let him be. I don't want to ruin the dynamic that we have going on right now, so I'll wait. In the meantime, we're separated. He comes to the house every once in a while to see Layla and is civil with me. Completely. He still does things like mow the lawn and send me money for Layla's expenses, and this gives me hope that he'll come around one day and we'll do a test. Until then, I'm grateful for how he's been acting. He's extremely kind towards me and has not filed for divorce yet. Even though I fear it'll happen one of these days, my exchange with my sister-in-law this afternoon makes me convinced that the day is coming soon. My perfect marriage is surely going to crumble, and she'll be so satisfied. When I see her this afternoon at the grocery store, I tried to walk the other way, but she had already seen me. She followed me and told me that I looked like I had let go of myself. She told me that I better start looking pretty again because the dating scene will be difficult to navigate. If I have a child, my response was that I had no interest in re-entering it. So then she asked if I had gotten back with my daughter's real father since I was not concerned. Anger started to rise deep within me, so I decided to walk away. But Rose would not have it. She followed me from aisle to aisle, telling me that Greg was going to leave me. She said that I needed to be humbled since I acted like I was better than her. By then, I was already fed up, so I angrily told her to leave me alone and get a life. I told her that, even at my absolute lowest, I was less miserable than her because I didn't want my nose in other people's business. In addition, I told her that Greg was still spending time with me and Layla and being a good father, yet her husband still preferred the local bar over her. Ooh, burn. Oh, and you should have seen the way her eyes got as big as a saucer as she told me that I knew nothing about her marriage. She promised me that I was going to lose everything and be in a worse position than her. But I just acted completely unfazed. The truth is that I'm afraid, especially since about an hour ago I get a text from Greg. He says that he wants to meet in 2 weeks to talk about a way forward. A part of me feels absolute dread because I know there's no way that he'll take me back. His family would lose it if he did that, and I'm sure that he's going to want a divorce. But I'm not worried. If we're going to start the process, then I can have a court-mandated DNA test. Once the truth is revealed, he's going to take me back, and we will happily be a family once again. Update number 2, 2 weeks later. I've just come back from dinner with Greg, and I am absolutely flabbergasted. There's so many thoughts swirling in my head right now, and so much absolute confusion. I feel like I've woken up in an alternate universe. Nothing seems to make sense right now, and I need you to make sense of it for me. So I met with him for dinner at one of our favorite restaurants tonight. I left Layla with my mom and will fetch her tomorrow after work because I needed to give him my full undivided attention. Once I was seated, we had a normal dinner, and he did not tell me why he called me, and I just decided to let him take the lead even though I was extremely nervous. The conversation was light and full of happiness, which I felt was a distraction tactic. I could already feel that he was about to drop a bomb on me. Finally, he told me that he had something to tell me as, well, we were eating our dessert. I asked him to continue as I waited with bated breath. He told me that, first of all, he wanted to say that I give him the best of his years of his life by being his wife. He said he had no complaints at all, and he appreciated how I always supported him. Afterward, he told me that he was very heartbroken when he found out that Layla was not his, and he thought he would never ever heal. It was, indeed, the ultimate betrayal. It hurt even more when I would not tell him who the father of the baby was. He then told me that something had been revealed to him which gave him answers, and he was no longer mad at me. Of course, I had to interrupt him and asked, well, what has been revealed to him that made him suddenly not so angry at me? He told me that he could not tell me what, he would reveal it in a later stage. But, that was not important, he said. He then showed me his hand, which had a ring on it. I asked why he was showing me his ring. Was he getting married again? Well, he simply laughed and told me that he wanted me to be his wife again. He wanted to forget all this and just restart on a clean slate. Of course, I obviously had so many questions and reservations, but he told me not to worry. He said that he knew everything he needed and was not about to lose a good wife over a mistake. I couldn't help but cry from his words. They meant a lot to me. I know that I never betrayed him, but for him to still love me and want me to be his wife, it's just so overwhelming. Right now, that's all I can focus on, and my infectious happiness after what he said. We're getting back together, and his family is going to choke after this. I can't wait to see the look on Rose's face when I come back into the picture. She really thought that our marriage was weak like hers? Stupid woman. Of course, I'm still bothered about the test results, but I'll accept it as a lab error. The important thing is that he loves me and wants to be a good husband and father. I can't contain my happiness. This was definitely not in the bingo cards. Update number 3. The other shoe dropped only a month after my husband took me back. To be honest, I was not expecting what was revealed tonight. It was a secret worthy of a book, and I got the front row seat. Yeah, it's been a month since my husband took me back, and the family's not happy about it. They can't fathom why he took me back, and to be honest, neither can I. But I make sure to act as if there's something I know that they do not, just to keep the upper hand. Things in our marriage have surprisingly gone back to normal. And we're now in our honeymoon stage again. Some time ago, an invitation for the annual family Thanksgiving dinner arrived. When I saw the invite, I refused to attend. I couldn't imagine dealing with them again, and just staring and the whispering and being treated like an outsider. My husband insisted that I attend and be dressed in the finest clothing, so I agreed, but I refused to bring our daughter, which he did not object to. The day of the Thanksgiving dinner arrived, and it was, well, going pretty great. Just kidding, it went as expected. They were mean to me and gave me nasty looks, and I wanted to leave, but Greg told me to stay because something was about to happen. Since I obviously love drama, just like any other person, I stayed, and I was not disappointed at all. Once the dinner was in full swing, Greg stood up and said that he wants to make a toast to me. He wanted to thank me for always being a good, loyal wife. Well, obviously the words baffled me, and I suspected that he was planning to, a revenge plot against me or something. The way that he was acting was too suspicious for my comfort. Rose made a face when he called me loyal, but he carried on. He said that I was the most beautiful, smart, intelligent woman that he's ever known. He also said that he then discovered Layla was not his. He couldn't believe it. He didn't. He questioned me and asked me for a name, but I gave none. Something told him that there was something amiss, so he secretly had another test done, which proved that he was Layla's father. He did the test 2 more times with 2 different labs, which proved the same thing. He is the father. Well, everybody was shocked by this news and just stared at each other. He carried on and told us that he decided to take me back and investigate. His investigation yielded results that proved that the test results had been switched. At that point, my mother-in-law told him to get to the point. He said that the way Rose and his brother started acting was suspicious. He suspected it was them. So he pulled some strings and got the real test results concerning their daughter, which proved she was not his brother's. I gasped. Absolutely flabbergasted. Immediately, I pointed at his brother and asked if he knew this. He nodded and said yes, and asked Rose to make sure the child would be his on the test results because they used the sperm donor. They didn't want the family to know because they feared being cut out of the inheritance if somebody found out. He swore that he never asked Rose to tamper with Layla's test results, though. As you can imagine, all hell broke loose at this whole family point, and they started questioning Rose left and right, who was in tears over being caught. She could not even form a proper sentence because she was shaking so much. Well, Greg's brother, on the other hand, kept on trying to pin it on her, which only made her shout at him and call him infertile. Luckily, one of our uncles separated the two, and the rest of the dinner was a disaster, with people treating them as I had been treated. Mother-in-law ended up telling all of us to go home. She said that only the older people of the family could remain to discuss this matter with Rose and Ethan. I'm not an elder, apparently, so therefore I had to leave with my husband, who has been taking turns answering phone calls all night because everybody wants the tea. I'll give you more tea if anything happens, guys, but for now, goodbye. Update number 4. 2 months later. Hey guys, it's been 2 long months since Rose and her husband got caught, and they're still in the middle of trouble. Their problems are not going to end anytime soon, I promise you that. And I'm glad about it. I was wrongfully punished by their lies, obviously. I would have no pity for them. Anyways, these are the series of events that leading up to what we're at now. First of all, they had to deal with the family elders who were not happy with them. Choosing to use a sperm donor because my brother-in-law cannot have kids was not the problem, but they should have said something when the samples were taken to save time. Mother-in-law said that it would not have been a problem at all. The problem came when they tried to conceal the truth and lie to the whole family. All because of greed. Because of their greed, an innocent woman was embarrassed and nearly lost her marriage. Come on. For that, the family was displeased with them. They were told that a suitable punishment would be given to them, but myself and my husband had every right to retaliate. Retaliate we did. There was no way that we were going to walk away unscathed. We decided to take the legal route when dealing with them. We opened a case against them for tampering with the test results and also sued for emotional distress. They tried to plead innocence, but various family members supported us and testified. Putting together the testimony as well as the evidence, they were found guilty. Very, very guilty. They had to pay us roughly $100,000, emotional damage and others, and also got 2 months in prison each as well as a 1-year suspended sentence. Brother-in-law's going to serve his sentence first because the judge took pity on them for having a daughter. Rose is out, but she has been very scarce. I wonder what this means for their marriage, because during the hearings they threw each other under the bus several times. The entire family was witness to the cracks in their marriage showing, and I knew it wasn't perfect, but I never knew how much loyalty they lacked for each other. Anyone who was in a stable marriage will tell you that it's important to be a team. It appears that the only time they have been a team is when they were trying to scheme their way into a bigger chunk of the inheritance. Other than that, they're mirrors to each other, selfish to the core. I feel sorry for their daughter who has to be raised by them. They have a very messed up idea about what family is supposed to be. And that's why they'll always hate on me and my husband. I'm not saying that Greg and I are perfect, guys, but we're definitely more resilient. We faced a huge test but managed to weather through. Is that not true dedication? Let me know what you guys would have done.